Western Church has always covered up the truth about the origin of demons. The Roman authorities removed a long series of ancient writings in order to shape one simple story about Lucifer. But the Ethiopian Bible of the Tewahedo Church did not. For thousands of years, they preserved one of the most complete sacred collections in the world, a vast treasury of 81 holy books. This canon preserves 4 forbidden books that directly expose Lucifer's true ambition. From the forbidden books about Adam and Eve preserved in Gehez, we uncover the root cause behind the cosmic rebellion. This fall came from extreme jealousy toward mankind's authority to rule. The devil refused to bow before Adam and despised humanity as nothing more than a lowly creature made from dust. Then comes the lost book known as the Kebra Nagast, which exposes his strategy for manipulating earthly power. Lucifer directly interferes with royal bloodlines, follows the Ark of the Covenant closely, and personally appears to test the wisdom of the Queen of Sheba. The Ascension of Isaiah reveals the true level of danger the devil poses within the heavenly realms. He transforms himself into a radiant angel of light, setting a cruel trap in order to block the great prophet's journey through the 7 heavens. The Garima Gospels serve as a harsh piece of visual evidence. The vivid illustrations in this manuscript clearly portray the forms of evil spirits imprisoned in chains, matching perfectly with the grim visions recorded by Enoch. These 4 ancient writings are about to be opened wide so we can decode the darkest ambition of the Lord of Darkness in full. The horror lies in the fact that this dark power does not merely exist inside ancient books. It continues to haunt humanity even today. Through the shadowy sacrificial rituals of Satanism, or the operations of secret societies that hold global power, Lucifer's mark of manipulation can still be clearly seen. So how can we recognize the devil's deceptive schemes and keep our faith in God intact? Right now, let us step into the journey of exposing the most brutal truth ever buried by religious history. The first book, The Conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan. What does it reveal about Lucifer's past? Forget the apple and the serpent. If you truly want to understand the source of Lucifer's hatred for mankind, a hatred that runs down to the bone, you have to look beneath your feet. Everything began with a handful of dust, the very dust from which God created Adam at the beginning of creation. Remember this: in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. At first there was nothing, no earth, no sky, no light, no sound, no living thing at all. Only complete darkness and silence. Then the Spirit of God moved upon that emptiness, giving it form and bringing it to life. God said, "Let there be light," and the first dawn of time brought light into the universe. God looked upon his work, saw that it was good, and separated the light from the darkness. He said, "Let the light be called day, and the darkness be called night." And so the first day of the earthly world came to an end. On the second day, God said, "Let there be a firmament like a dome over the universe, and let it be called heaven." And it was so. God created the sky and the rain clouds, placing them above with the waters below. On the third day, God said, "Let the waters under the firmament be gathered together into one place, so that dry land may appear." And it was so. Mountains, plains, and valleys rose up from the waters, becoming vast stretches of dry land, divided by deep and wide waters. God called the dry land earth, and the waters he called seas. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth plants and grass flowers and trees, each producing its own seed, so that the earth may never cease to bear life." And it was so. Soft grass spread like a carpet across the ground. Plants grew abundantly, bringing forth flowers and seed. Trees rose up and bore fruit, each according to its own kind, and their seed spread across the face of the earth. On the fourth day, God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to mark the seasons, the days, and the years, and to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God created the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they shone upon the earth. With the two greatest lights, God made the sun to rule the day and the moon to rule the night. On the fifth day, God said, "Let the waters bring forth living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the firmament of heaven." And it was so. God created the great whales, the tiny fish, and every living thing beneath the waters, along with mighty hawks, tiny sparrows, and every kind of bird in the sky. Now there was life in the waters and in the heavens, and the universe was no longer wrapped in its first silence. By the end of the fifth day, birdsong had already filled the earth. On the sixth day, God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures, cattle, creeping things, and wild beasts that walk upon the ground." And it happened exactly so. God created the cattle, the creeping things, and every wild beast that lived upon the earth. Yet there was still no living creature that bore the form of God. And God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the cattle and the wild beasts, every creeping thing in all the earth." And so God created man in his own image. From the dust of the ground, he formed the shape of man, and he breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, and man became a living being. God called that man Adam, and gave him every plant and fruit-bearing tree on the earth, every beautiful flower and shade-giving tree, every bird in the sky, and every creature that walked and crawled upon the ground. At that time, Adam enjoyed the fruits of the earth and ruled over every living creature. He observed all the cattle, the birds of the air, and every wild beast, and gave names to them. Yet he had no idea that in the invisible realms, high above, one gaze was looking down with utter contempt and rage. That gaze belonged to Lucifer. To understand the source of this fury, and to open the file titled, "These Four Lost Books," from the Ethiopian Bible reveal Lucifer's real story, we must turn to the first ancient text, the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan. Western theology erased this book completely from its canon, but the Ethiopian tradition preserved the harsh truth inside it in the ancient Ge'ez language. The book exposes a painful reality. Lucifer was a being born from the brightest sacred fire, and he was filled with unbearable rage when the Creator commanded all beings to bow in honor before mankind. To the Lord of Darkness, Adam was nothing more than an inferior lump of clay. He rejected the command. He could not accept that a weak creature made of dust could bear the image of God and be given authority over the whole earth. That pride immediately became a fire of eternal hatred. He swore to destroy the creation whom the Creator loved most. At this point, if you only read the Standard Bible, the story moves very quickly. The serpent appears, mankind eats the forbidden fruit, they are driven out of the Garden of Eden, and the page turns to a new chapter. But the ancient Ethiopian text exposes a massive hidden gap. Eden was actually only the opening scene. The moment the gates of paradise slammed shut behind Adam and Eve, the most brutal hunt in history officially began. He followed mankind down to earth. At the very moment humanity collapsed in the cave of treasures, Satan began to spread his net. The devil launched the cruelest psychological attacks. He constantly changed his form, distorted sounds, created illusions, and dug deep into their longing for Eden in order to push mankind to the edge of suicide. But this mental torment outside the cave of treasures was only one part of a carefully calculated campaign of destruction. The ancient book lays out in detail the long campaign in which the Lord of Darkness stalked and surrounded humanity. To see how dangerous this being truly is, we need to expose each specific attack he brought down upon Adam and Eve. The first wound in that campaign did not happen in the wilderness or inside a dark cave. It erupted right in the heart of the holy Garden of Eden, when the devil slipped himself into the scales of a serpent. At that time, while Adam and Eve still obeyed the word of God, they lived a life of great joy in the Garden of Eden. They had food without labor. Their souls were pure and so the world around them was also completely pure. Only beautiful things worthy of their spiritual state existed there. In that world, brightly colored birds flew gently from flower to flower, from branch to branch, singing sweet songs that rose toward the heavens. The river was also gentle. It knew how to lift its waters softly to water the trees without causing floods. The trees were full of fruit flowers and fresh green shoots. Especially there were no thorny weeds, because ugly and harmful things had no place in a world where human beings and divine beings dwelt together. Adam's work was very light. He cared for the garden because God did not want him to spend the whole day in heavy labor. There were all kinds of trees, fresh and beautiful through every season, especially lovely when green leaves and young shoots made the branches shine, and there were many fruit trees. In the center of the Garden of Eden stood the tree of life, also known as the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But Adam and Eve knew nothing of evil. Their world was entirely good. In that world, they were free and unafraid, like birds in the sky and animals roaming through forests and fields. God also walked and spoke with Adam and Eve, an image so intimate that it felt like the relationship between a father and his children or a teacher and his students. They lived innocently like children, and they had faith in their God. But everything would change completely when Eve took the fruit from the tree of life, also called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was not an apple, as many people mistakenly believe. When one knows life, one also knows death, because mutual generation and mutual restraint are part of the principle of the earthly world. Where there is good, there is evil. Where there is the upright side, there is the opposing side. Where there is life, there is death. Where there is right, there is wrong. Without good people, would we know who the bad people are? So eating the fruit of the tree of life meant that Adam and Eve rejected eternal life in Eden, and they would die. Why is it also called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Because once they ate that fruit, the mind of distinction began to form. This is good, that is bad. This is right, that is wrong. When they began to perceive good and evil through their opened fleshly eyes, acquired human notions began to take shape. The standard of good and evil was something they began setting for themselves because it was based on the perceptions of the 5 human senses, which can only bring false appearances. So how could that be the standard of divine beings? God did not regard their nakedness as wrong. Otherwise, he would have created clothes for them from the beginning. What he regarded as important was their inner nature. In truth, the world they were living in was so beautiful that there was no evil there. There was only the decline of their own moral nature. Along with the mind of distinction, they also developed doubt because they no longer completely trusted God. Once their moral state no longer met the standard of the world of Eden, they had to be lowered into the world of ordinary human beings. The trouble began when Eve was influenced by the outside world. She listened to the most cunning and beautiful creature at that time, the serpent. Because the serpent was cunning, it knew to approach the woman whom it believed would be easier to influence. If it had approached Adam, it may not have succeeded. Because as the story had already said, though he did not know what death meant, he knew that he had to obey and love God, the one who had created him. Because it was cunning, the serpent tempted Eve to doubt the word of God. It began with a crafty question. Has God told you that you may not eat from every tree in the garden? Eve answered, We may eat from every tree in the garden except one. Concerning the tree in the middle of the garden, God said that we must not eat from it nor touch it, or we will surely die. You surely will not die, the serpent said. God told you that you would die so that you would be afraid and not eat the fruit, because he knows that if you eat it, your eyes will be opened and you will become wise like divine beings, knowing both good and evil. Eve looked again at the tree. It was pleasing to the eyes, and its fruit looked delicious. If eating that fruit would truly make her wise, then it was indeed a tree to be desired. She did not realize that she was being tempted in an extremely subtle way by a deceitful beast. She reached out and her fingers picked the fruit. She tasted it and began to eat. The serpent went away and left her to eat. She had shared the whole world with her husband, so she would also share with him this new thing she had discovered. The fruit tasted fragrant and sweet, and Adam also had to eat some of it. Eve gave some to her husband, and Adam also ate the forbidden fruit. It is true that they did not die immediately, but by that act of disobedience, they rejected eternal life for themselves. It is also true that their eyes were opened, and now they recognized things they had never known before. For the first time, they realized that they were naked, and for the first time, they felt shame. They knew they had done wrong, and when they could not hide all their shame and fear, they hid themselves among the thick, leafy bushes. Then they heard the footsteps of God as he walked in the garden in the cool breeze of the evening, and they withdrew deeper into the bushes to hide from his face. "Adam, where are you?" God called. Adam answered, "I am here, Lord. I heard your footsteps in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself." God asked, "How did you know that you were naked? Have you eaten from the forbidden tree so that you now know this?" "This woman," Adam said, "Eve gave me some of the fruit and I ate it." God turned to Eve and asked with sorrow, "Why have you done this?" "The serpent," the woman said. "The serpent tempted me and I ate." Adam and Eve had done wrong by disobeying. God asked only for obedience, and they failed to meet his command. The serpent had also done wrong by deceiving Eve, and God's first sentence of judgment was directed at that creature. "Because you have done this," God said to the serpent, "you are cursed above every wild beast. From now on you shall crawl on your belly, and you shall eat dust all the days of your life. You and this woman and your offspring and her offspring shall be enemies forever." From then on, the serpent no longer stood upright and proud, but lay close to the ground, lower than every animal on earth. And it crawled on its belly through the dust. "And you," God said to Eve, "shall have pain and suffering, and you shall conceive children in sorrow. You shall never be equal to the man, for he shall rule over you." And so Adam and Eve were driven out of the Garden of Eden. At the entrance, Jehovah placed angels and a flaming sword, turning in every direction so that they could never return. And that serpent was not merely a talking snake. Hidden behind that form was Satan, the rebellious angel, the one who borrowed the body of the serpent to tempt mankind. And Scripture records that in the last days, God will destroy Satan so that he will never again be able to deceive humanity into doing evil. The story of the ancient serpent is also a reminder. Only by staying near the presence of God can mankind escape temptation and find eternal peace again. But the story of Satan did not end in the Garden of Eden. When he was defeated and cast out of heaven, he did not disappear. He fell to the earth, and from there he began to carry out the rest of his plan. Unable to violate heaven anymore, Satan turned toward conquering the human heart. He clothed himself in more terrifying manifestations, malformed beasts, destructive kingdoms, and even false prophets. The next scheme. Lucifer disguises himself as an angel of light. As we continue opening, the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan, an extremely important ancient text preserved in full within the 81-book canon of the Ethiopian Church. You will read with your own eyes a completely different criminal file on Lucifer. At this point, Adam and Eve have just been cast out of the Garden of Eden, thrown straight into a wild world they have never known before. No more sacred radiance, no more food already provided, and most terrifying of all, no more power of immortality. Their only shelter now is a dark, cold stone cave called the Cave of Treasures. This cave sits tucked directly beneath the cliffs of Eden, in a position that can only be described as brutally cruel. Close enough for the wind to still carry the fragrance of paradise down to them, yet blocked off just enough for them to know that they will never have a way back. And it does not stop there. The moment they step out of the garden, Adam and Eve experience for the first time in their existence what it means for their stomachs to ache with hunger. In Eden, they never had to worry about hunting, gathering, or cooking. Now, faint with hunger, surrounded only by barren rocks and earth, they have absolutely no idea what to put into their mouths in order to survive. Even more frightening is the darkness. In paradise, they lived in eternal light. So the moment they see the sun set for the first time and the black night cover the ground, Adam and Eve fall into complete panic. They weep in terror, thinking this darkness is an eternal punishment, that the light has died, and that they will be swallowed forever. Their feet, once used to walking on soft grass, are now cut and bloodied by stones. Their bodies, stripped of divine protection, begin to learn what it means to feel cold slicing through the flesh. Their bodies are exhausted. Their spirits are shattered. Hunger, cold, and fear drive Adam and Eve into total despair. And precisely when humanity is suffering the most, Lucifer strikes the decisive blow. He understands Adam and Eve completely. He knows very well that they are sitting in the darkness weeping, and he knows exactly what they crave most. They long for light. They miss the angels who once walked beside them every day. He grasps the exact image haunting their minds, and so he brings that very image out as the trap. The book describes it this way: while Adam and Eve are huddled inside the dark cave, they suddenly see a dazzling radiance appear right at the entrance. Lucifer stands there, his whole body shining brilliantly like a high-ranking angel. And behind him, he brings an entire army of counterfeit angels, shining just as brightly. He declares in a commanding voice, "I am an angel of the great God. Look at the hosts surrounding me. God has sent me down to bring you home." Do you see how sinister this strategy is? To two exhausted people, that radiance is a lifeline. He uses their own memory as the trap. He brings out the exact thing they have just lost, at the exact moment they desire it most. But this perfect performance collapses at the last moment. With one final trace of clarity, Adam keeps his feet still. He raises his hands in prayer and asks God to confirm who is standing before him. God answers. The mask of glory shatters. Lucifer is exposed on the spot. And yet an old fox always looks for another chance to return. He steps back into the darkness. And in his next appearance, he switches to a far more merciless script. After the performance as an angel of light was exposed, Lucifer immediately recognized the weakness in his plan. False hope could not bring humanity down, so he would turn to absolute despair. The devil stepped back, changed his entire strategy, and aimed directly at the deadliest weakness of Adam and Eve. At that time, their gut-wrenching hunger and psychological torment. In the following days, at the Cave of Treasures, when the two humans were so exhausted, they no longer had enough strength to stand. Lucifer no longer brought any dazzling light. This time, he transformed himself into a black shadow of brutal truth and struck directly at their guilt. He kept appearing around the cave, pouring the most poisonous whispers into their ears. He insisted that God had forever despised them, that every attempt to pray was worthless, and that the real punishment was not living outside Eden, but slowly tasting hunger and cold until their bodies rotted into dust. The real goal of this script was to force Adam and Eve to take their own lives. The ancient book records the moment the devil drove these two weakened human beings to the very edge of a steep mountain cliff. He painted a vision of release, brainwashing them into believing that throwing themselves into the abyss was the only way to end this physical torment. He fed them the thought that death was the most fitting punishment to pay for the sin they had committed. Do you see the extreme cruelty of this attack? Lucifer did not even bother to dirty his own hands by killing them himself. He wanted human beings to crush with their own hands the life that the Creator had breathed into them, in order to prove before the entire universe that this creature made from clay was a miserable failure. This attack was so sharp because it used humanity's own remorse its own desire to make amends, and turned it into the blade that would end their lives. Chapter 57 of the book states clearly, Satan called to Adam and Eve with a loud voice and said, "O Adam, you have no more hope. God has forsaken you, and you shall die in this dark place." He sought to make them despair that they might throw themselves down and die. It truly was a sophisticated scheme, one that would be difficult for anyone to withstand. Adam and Eve, in their panic, hunger, thirst, and absolute despair, walked to the edge of the cliff and threw themselves down from the mountain peak. Both of them died from the fall, their bodies torn apart and crushed. But once again, Lucifer's game was overturned. The merciful God, the one who always watches over his creatures, looked down upon Adam and Eve as they lay dead. He immediately sent an angel down to intervene, healed every mangled wound on their bodies, and raised them back to their feet. Remember this? Lucifer had brainwashed human beings into thinking that death was the only way to atone. But the truth is the complete opposite. This body was shaped by God's own hands. This life was breathed into being by him. To destroy it by your own will is an act of betrayal and the deepest insult to the Creator. You do not have the right to throw away the masterpiece he has created. This event exposes an extremely brutal law that demons are still using to manipulate human beings in the modern world right now. When they cannot seduce you with glittering lights or empty promises, they cling to the pain, insecurity, and guilt inside you. They keep planting the thought in your mind that you are completely ruined, that your sins can never be forgiven, and that God crossed your name out long ago. They want you to believe you are worthless so that you will crush your own life with your own hands. But the moment Adam and Eve were healed completely shattered that lie. The ancient book gives an absolute truth. No matter how much sin you carry, no matter how far you have fallen into the depths of filth and hopelessness, the door of salvation has never been closed. As long as in that darkest moment you turn your thoughts toward God and sincerely ask for forgiveness, He will immediately stretch out His hand, answer you, and redeem you. Lucifer and the plot to cause humanity's first death. At this point, there is one detail you must be extremely alert to in order to see through the true nature of the devil. In fact, the name Lucifer, meaning the light bearer, had been stripped away long ago. From the very day he rebelled in heaven and was cast down into the abyss, his light had gone out. He had fallen from his place and officially carried a new name, Satan, which literally means the enemy. And yet, outside the entrance of the Cave of Treasures, he dragged out the radiant shell of his former Lucifer image to cosplay one last time, hoping to deceive Adam and Eve. He thought that fake label of angelic light could blind human beings. But when God intervened and shattered the scheme to force them into suicide, that mask of glory completely broke apart. Satan was exposed. He knew he could no longer perform that counterfeit angel role with these two people for even one more second. He appeared again in his original ugly demonic form, and true to the nature of a real enemy. When he saw that all his wicked schemes had been stopped, Satan quietly began planning a third attack against humanity. He changed tactics and pointed his weapon directly at the next generation, the children of Adam. And it is the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan itself that exposes a chilling truth about the first murder case in human history. Everything began when Eve gave birth to two sons. Cain, the firstborn, loved to keep his face turned toward the soil, plowing and planting, just like his father. Abel, the younger brother, chose to become a shepherd. When the two brothers built an altar to offer sacrifices, the difference between them began to emerge. Cain brought piles of crops and grain that he had grown with his own hands. Abel was different. He offered to God the best young lambs of his flock. God accepted Abel's offering because he offered living beings that shared the breath of life as a way of giving himself completely. By contrast, God rejected Cain's offering because Cain still held on to selfishness and was not willing to give everything. Cain immediately burned with anger. He was bitter because he thought he had done his best, had plowed and sweated with his own hands. So why was he not recognized? His face darkened and murderous intent rose fiercely inside him. God saw through that resentment and warned him directly. Why are you angry? If you do what is right, you will be accepted. You must master sin yourself. Do not let sin master you. But Cain ignored every warning. He allowed hatred to swallow his reason. Why was his younger brother favored more? Why was his own labor treated as worthless? And right at that moment, Satan smelled blood. The devil saw in Cain a deadly weakness, a very familiar scent, envy. He seized that golden opportunity at once. Satan lingered inside Cain's mind, pouring the most poisonous and provocative whispers into his thoughts. He pointed out the injustice. He stirred him up, saying that his right as the older brother was being taken away, that Abel was stealing the glory that should have belonged to Cain. Do you see the malice here? The devil took the very feeling of resentment over losing status, the same thing that had caused his own fall in heaven, and injected it straight into the bloodstream of humanity. Here is the most terrifying part. The book shows that the idea of killing one's own kind did not naturally arise in the mind of a creature who had never known death. When the two brothers went out into the field to speak, anger erupted into a fierce argument. At that exact moment, Satan was the one pulling the strings of rage. He planted in Cain the thought of raising a stone to end a living breath. Cain leapt upon his younger brother and beat him savagely. The moment Abel's blood stained the ground, Red Cain coldly abandoned his brother's body there. Satan won a major victory. He gained the first human life, destroyed the first family, not by putting his own hands into the act, but by turning a human being into an instrument of killing. This strike brought the devil's art of manipulation to its highest level, using brother to slaughter brother. That bloody event closed the first storm-filled chapter of humanity at the Cave of Treasures. But when God questioned him, "Where is Abel, your brother?" he was not asking because he lacked information. He was throwing Cain one final lifeline, to confess and repent. In response, Cain lied and pushed that mercy away with an insolent attitude. Even when he received the sentence of exile, Cain did not shed a single tear for his dead brother. He only cried out because he feared that someone else would kill him, life for life. That extreme selfishness showed that the poison of the devil had soaked into his very marrow. Finally, Cain was afraid. "My punishment is too great for me to bear," he cried. "You have driven me away from your sight and away from the company of mankind, and I will find no home for myself anywhere on the earth. Where shall I go? I will be a homeless wanderer, and as I wander, I will be killed by everyone's hand. Whoever sees me will surely murder me." Then the Lord said to him, "Whoever kills Cain will be punished sevenfold. I will place a mark on you so that wherever you go, people will not recognize you and will not harm you. You will not be killed by anyone who recognizes you." Then Cain left the land of his parents and wandered to a distant land called Nod. He no longer spoke with God, and yet God did not abandon him. Even though Cain had killed his brother, God still allowed him to live, to build a city, and to find a wife. And over time, Cain's family became countless in number and rich in worldly possessions. But look closely, Cain never regretted or repented. He left, built a bustling city, married, had many children, and gathered vast worldly wealth. By society's standards, Cain lived an extremely fulfilled and successful life. But the price of that prosperity was that his entire lineage had permanently severed its connection with God. This is Satan's most classic masterpiece of manipulation. Sometimes the most brutal sentence is not the destruction of the body. The devil is willing to fill your life with money, status, power, and material abundance, satisfying every earthly desire as long as you forget the existence of the Creator. A body living in comfort, wrapped around a clinically dead soul. That is the absolute and cruelest victory of the darkness. This bloody event officially closed the first survival chapter of humanity at the Cave of Treasures. But the ambition of the devil never has an endpoint. As humanity began to multiply, establish kingship, and build empires, Satan immediately upgraded the game. He hungered for power on a global scale, and he wanted to manipulate the thrones. And that is exactly when we must close the book of Adam and Eve and open wide the second forbidden file, the Kebra Nagast, where the Lord of Darkness directly interferes with royal bloodlines and aims straight at the most sacred power machine on earth, the Ark of the Covenant. The second book, Kebra Nagast, Ethiopia's most sacred epic. But before we go deeper into how the devil manipulated thrones, you need to know exactly what kind of document we are holding in our hands and why it was hidden. If you bring the Kebra Nagast to Western theologians, they will wave it away immediately. This book is absolutely not included in the list of the standard 66 books of the Bible. For centuries, the West has pushed it to the margins, placing it in the category of extra-canonical literature. They argue that this text was only compiled and completed around the 14th century by Ethiopian scholars, and they treat it as a kind of political propaganda tool used to legitimize the power of the royal dynasty. In short, the West sees it as mythology, as a product woven together by human hands. But that is a mistake. The Kebra Nagast did not appear out of nowhere. It was stitched together and compiled from extremely ancient fragments of history, locked closely to Coptic Arabic and Syriac traditions from thousands of years ago. For the Ethiopian church, and for millions of people there, it is not a legend to read for entertainment. It is a national treasure. It is the most sacred document preserving the truth about the royal bloodline and the true location of the Ark of the Covenant. By cutting this book out of the system, the West unintentionally hid a profoundly important part of the criminal file of the Lord of Darkness. Because if the book of Adam and Eve shows you how Satan destroyed one small family inside a stone cave, then the Kebra Nagast will expose how the devil manipulated an entire empire. At this point, the historical setting has completely changed. Human beings are no longer barely surviving in despair inside dark caves. They have developed, multiplied, and built vast, wealthy kingdoms, and Satan immediately changes his entire strategy. He realizes that deceiving one person at a time with a few isolated illusions takes too much effort. If he wants to control the whole world, he must take hold of those sitting on thrones. He aims directly at the highest power machine of humanity at that time, royal bloodlines. The Kebra Nagast records a very dark truth about how the devil lays traps for nations. The book exposes how Satan created a massive brainwashing system on a global scale. Before the Queen of Sheba, whom the Ethiopians call Makeda, met King Solomon, her entire kingdom was immersed in sun worship. Do you think that was a random cultural development? Not at all. It was a historical deception directed personally by Satan. He hid the existence of the Creator and swapped the concept brainwashing human beings so they would kneel before false gods or false lords that he himself had created. And yet, every calculation of the devil was drenched in cold water when King Solomon appeared with the Ark of the Covenant. You must understand that the Ark of the Covenant in the Kebra Nagast is not just a gold-covered wooden chest holding 2 stone tablets. It is a tremendous machine of power, the physical manifestation of God's strength on the earth. Wherever the Ark of the Covenant is, the power of demons is crushed. And the one who controlled that machine, King Solomon, was a true nightmare for the Lord of Darkness. Because Solomon was not a tyrant blinded by the throne. He was a man who worshiped the Creator with absolute devotion. Solomon stepped onto the throne when he was still very young, carrying on his shoulders the enormous legacy of his great father, King David. He had to face overwhelming pressure. Try putting yourself in the position of a young man who suddenly has to command an entire vast empire with a great population surrounded by enemies both within and outside. Anyone in that position could easily fall into panic, try to hoard money, build armies, or use brutal dictatorship to cover the weakness inside. Demons always wait for moments of power transition like this. They lie in wait to dig into the arrogance or fear of young kings, and from there, turn them into obedient puppets. But Solomon made a move that lay outside every expectation of Satan. He began with thousands of offerings presented to God with the deepest reverence. And then the fateful night in the land of Gibeon changed the entire balance of history. In a dream, God appeared and gave the young king an unprecedented privilege. He gave Solomon a blank check and said, "Ask for whatever you want, and I will give it to you." What do you think a king holding power in his hands would ask for if he were a man manipulated by greed? He would cry out for mountains of gold and silver, for immortality, or for the heads of all the enemies scheming to overthrow his throne. The devil longed for him to ask for those material things, because arrogance and greed are the doorway through which demons enter. But Solomon gave an answer that stunned all heaven and left the demons frozen. He knelt down and confessed a truth from the depths of his heart. "I am only a little child, and I do not know how to go out or come in before so great a people." He did not ask for wealth. He did not ask for the lives of his enemies. The only thing he asked for was an understanding heart, a sharp wisdom to distinguish good from evil, so he could rule and lead human beings along the right path of light. That extreme humility completely shattered Satan's doorway. God was so pleased that he not only granted Solomon supernatural wisdom beyond every great man in the world, but also gave him the wealth, glory, and power he had not even opened his mouth to request. And with that divine wisdom, Solomon did not merely see through the schemes and deceit inside the hearts of human beings. He saw straight through the invisible forces as well. The Kebra, Nagast, and ancient writings describe that with the wisdom given to him, King Solomon possessed an unprecedented power to the point that he could summon, bind, and force the demons serving Satan to carry stones and saw wood in order to build the temple. Can you imagine the humiliation of the Lord of Darkness at that moment? The dark forces that once proudly stood over humanity, deceiving nations, were now humiliated by a flesh and blood human being. But do you think Satan would give up because of that? All of it only made him more furious. When he realized he could not pierce Solomon's armor of wisdom in Jerusalem, Satan decided to change tactics. When an old fox cannot break a fortress, it will try to surround and isolate that fortress. He stretched his tentacles farther outward. The book exposes how Satan established a massive brainwashing system on a global scale. And the number one target that came into his sight was the wealthiest and most powerful empire of the south. The kingdom of Sheba, under the reign of the Queen of Sheba, whom the Ethiopians call Makeda. Before the Queen of Sheba knew about King Solomon, her entire kingdom was immersed in sun worship. Do you think that was a random development in religious culture? Not at all. It was a historical deception directed personally by Satan. He knew clearly that if this kingdom gained access to the truth about God, their strength combined with Solomon's would create an unstoppable alliance. So he acted first. He hid the existence of the Creator and swapped the concept. He brainwashed the entire nation, causing them to kneel and offer sacrifices to lifeless objects moving through the sky. His goal was very clear: to lock the most powerful royal bloodline in Africa inside eternal ignorance, turning them into godless puppets to stand as a counterweight against Solomon's kingdom. He wanted the Queen of Sheba trapped in darkness so she would never have the chance to touch the light of the Ark of the Covenant. And yet, the devil's perfectly calculated script developed a fatal flaw. Rumors about the supernatural wisdom of a king in Jerusalem began reaching the ears of the Queen of Sheba. Curiosity awakened. She decided to load gold, silver, and spices onto caravans of camels and personally cross the desert to meet Solomon. The moment the Queen of Sheba set out, Satan knew he was about to lose everything. If these two powerful royal bloodlines met face to face, the entire brainwashing empire he had worked so hard to build would collapse into nothing. And so the devil frantically launched a preemptive strike through psychological warfare, hoping to destroy this historic meeting before it could even be born. What did he do? He used one of the dirtiest tactics in politics, character assassination. Satan understood very well that he could not use sandstorms or wild beasts to stop a royal camel caravan armed to the teeth. So he attacked the minds of King Solomon and the court officials in Jerusalem. He manipulated the most horrifying rumors to fly across the desert, arriving before the Queen of Sheba ever set foot there. He spread the claim that this southern queen was not human, that she was actually a demon disguised as a beautiful woman, an inferior creature with the hoofed feet of a donkey or a goat. What a wicked plan. The devil wanted to use strangeness and disgusting prejudice to build a wall of revulsion. He wanted Solomon as a holy king to despise and refuse to receive this unclean creature. He wanted to sever every opportunity for the Queen of Sheba to see the light of truth with her own eyes. But Satan miscalculated once again. He forgot that he was facing the man with the sharpest wisdom in history. Solomon never believed cheap rumors. Through a few intelligent and subtle tests, he easily exposed the devil's lie and proved before the entire court that the Queen of Sheba was fully a flesh and blood human being. The fog of prejudice was blown away completely, and the moment the Queen of Sheba stepped into the temple, saw the power of the Ark of the Covenant with her own eyes, and heard the wisdom of Solomon, an explosion of awareness took place. She immediately realized that the sun her people had been kneeling before all this time was only a burning stone in the sky, a grand deception of the devil. Without hesitating for even a second, the Queen of Sheba kicked away that godless belief system and officially turned back to honor the Creator. Satan's brainwashing machine in the southern kingdom was officially smashed to pieces. But the nightmare of the Lord of Darkness still did not end there. The union of these two great people produced a son, Menelik. Carrying the blood of both great royal houses, Menelik not only inherited the throne, but also carried out a mission that shook history. He secretly took the Ark of the Covenant out of Jerusalem and headed straight toward the wild land of Ethiopia in order to protect it. That was a slap that struck directly across the devil's ambitions. By taking the Ark of the Covenant away, Menelik permanently removed this machine of power from the furnace of the Middle East, saving it from the bloody wars, plundering and tearing apart that Satan would work so hard to orchestrate for thousands of years afterward. The game in the Kebra Nagast closes with the humiliating, miserable defeat of the Lord of Darkness. He failed to break the throne, failed to brainwash the queen, and lost track of the Ark of the Covenant itself. But if you think a demon like Satan would swallow this rage and step back, you are badly mistaken. When he realized he could not defeat humanity through tactics on the ground, he decided to flip the entire board. He lifted his eyes toward the sky. He no longer bothered using the broken demons of the earthly realm, but decided to activate forces beyond human understanding. And that is the moment true terror covered all humanity. The game in the Kebra Nagast closes with the miserable and humiliating defeat of the Lord of Darkness. He failed to break the throne, failed to brainwash the queen, and even lost track of the Ark of the Covenant. And yet, if you think a demon like Satan would swallow this rage and step back, you are badly mistaken. When he realized he could not defeat humanity through attacks on the ground, he decided to flip the entire board. He lifted his eyes toward the sky. He no longer bothered using the broken demons of the earthly realm, but decided to activate forces beyond human understanding. At this point, we have only opened 2 of the 5 top secret files. And to understand the truly devastating scale of this war, we must close the Kebra Nagast and step straight into the 3rd book, the Book of Enoch. This is where the event is exposed. The Watchers tore open the boundary of space, descended to Earth, transmitted forbidden knowledge, and drowned the entire planet in a sea of blood, through the giant race of the Nephilim. But remember, hold on to your seat, because Enoch is not the final boss. The most insane secrets about how demons operate this universe are still waiting for us in the Ascension of Isaiah and the historical closing strike in the Garima Gospels. Now, are you ready to look up into the sky and face the Watcher? Welcome to the third forbidden territory, the Book of Enoch. This book was ruthlessly crossed out by the Western world and the mainstream churches, thrown out of printed Bibles for centuries. Why? Because it contains a truth so insane that it blows apart every traditional view of demons. But for the Ethiopian church, it is a blood-written historical document. And when you open the Book of Enoch, you will see Satan's strategy upgraded from small-scale sabotage into a cosmic invasion. Remember the Book of Adam and Eve? Satan deceived two people inside a stone cave. Then in the Kebra Nagast, he deceived an entire nation by manipulating a throne. But here, when every tactic on the ground is neutralized by God, the devil flips the board. He stops playing with human beings. He opens a spatial gate and drags his accomplices down from heaven. The Book of Enoch records a shocking event. 200 high-ranking angels, called the Watchers, tore open the boundary of space and descended to Earth on the summit of Mount Hermon. These were beings carrying cosmic power. Under the leadership of Samyaza, these 200 beings made a blood-soaked oath on the mountaintop they would carry out this operation together, regardless of every punishment from God. At this point, many of you may wonder, wait. The book clearly says the leader of these 200 angels was Samyaza, while the infamous one who taught humans to make weapons was Azazel. So where is Satan? Could the Lord of Darkness really be sitting on the sidelines in this event? If you think that, then you have forgotten a shocking event that had erupted long before this, the great coup in heaven. Do not forget that Satan was the first being who dared to rise up against God, and he did not fall alone. Through extreme cunning, he successfully seduced, brainwashed, and dragged down 1/3 of all the angels in heaven with him. He was the one who planted the seed of betrayal, arrogance, and desire into the heavenly system. So Samyaza, Azazel, and the 200 Watchers did not suddenly invent the idea of rebellion on their own. They were all products of the rebellious ideological axis Satan had already rooted into place. Satan is the one who opened the road, the chief architect of every uprising. In this operation of breaking the boundary and descending to Earth, he did not need to personally stand on Mount Hermon and recite the blood oath. He stepped back into the darkness, pulled the strings, and let lower-ranking generals like Samyaza lead the forces to execute a cruel plot aimed at the women of Earth. But be very clear at this point, desire is only the surface of the iceberg. The real plot of Satan and the Watchers is 10,000 times more cruel than that. Their core goal was to erase the original human genome. They bred with human beings to produce a monstrous hybrid race called the Nephilim, bloodthirsty giants. The devil knew that God created mankind in his image. So what is the most vicious form of revenge? It is to contaminate that bloodline, turning God's creation into a hybrid monster that could not be redeemed. These giants carried within them an endless hunger, a bottomless greed. At first, they seized and devoured all the labor of humanity. Every harvest, every herd, every food supply on Earth was swept clean by them. But the true nightmare only arrived when food ran out. When humanity was exhausted and could no longer fill their enormous stomachs, these monsters immediately turned against them. They began slaughtering the very people who had given birth to them and raised them. The book describes the Earth at that time as turning into one massive slaughterhouse. The Nephilim hunted human beings like wild animals. They devoured people alive, and once the smell of blood awakened their most bestial instincts, they threw away every boundary. They turned on one another, tearing apart and drinking the blood of their own kind. From birds to wild beasts to reptiles, not a single living creature escaped the massacre. The Earth was soaked in violence, blood, and corruption. The desperate cries of all living things echoed straight up to the heavens, and it didn't stop there. To make sure human beings would destroy one another from within, the Watchers launched a large-scale transfer of dark technology. They brought forbidden knowledge secrets far ahead of their time that had been locked away in heaven and threw them straight down into humanity. In this campaign, the most infamous name, and the one carrying the heaviest guilt, was Azazel. Do you think an ancient farmer suddenly slapped his forehead and figured out how to dig or melt metal and forge a killing sword? There was absolutely no random evolution here. Azazel was the one who unlocked the deadly secrets of the earth's depths. He taught human beings how to cast swords, forge shields, make daggers, and build breastplates. The moment the first forge fire blazed, Azazel officially gave birth to the weapons industry and a bloody global arms race. But Azazel understood too well that physical violence alone was not enough to corrupt a society. He wanted to collapse its moral foundation too, so he opened a second front. He taught human beings how to extract precious stones, craft bracelets, and especially, he taught women how to use antimony to line their eyes, how to paint the lips and face. Do not think makeup in that era was an ordinary beauty need. It was an art of manipulation. Azazel weaponized outward beauty, turning it into a tool to bend reason, stir desire, fuel deception, and destroy the sacredness of original families. While Azazel handled the front of weapons and sensuality, the other Watchers swarmed in to manipulate the spiritual world. Semjaza taught human beings spells and how to use roots for sorcery. Kokabel Barakiel and others taught astrology, showing humanity how to read omens from constellations and the orbit of the moon. They deliberately redirected human faith, causing mankind to become obsessed with using magic and divination to decide their own fate, instead of relying on the guidance of the Creator. The consequence of this knowledge transfer was a horrifying disaster. In the blink of history, humanity went from gentle herding and farming communities into machines of killing and deceit. Men swung swords to take lives in the fight for power. Women sank into the spell of seduction and desire. The world turned into a mad chaos. The earth was not only ravaged by giants. Human beings themselves turned into bloodthirsty demons, mercilessly tearing apart their own kind without the devil needing to touch them with his own hands. And so Satan thought he had 100% secured victory. He was certain he had trapped God in a perfect snare with no way out. He smugly calculated it this way: if God closed his eyes and ignored all this, the earth would forever be the playground of giant monsters. But if God became angry and raised his hand to destroy the entire world, then Satan would still win because humanity would die with it. No matter how the game was played, the devil was sure he had victory in his hands. But Satan was wrong. God knew everything. So in the middle of a world gone mad and drowning in sin, God quietly preserved one righteous family like a rare seed of goodness for a new humanity. That was the family of Noah. As for morally corrupted mankind, they would soon receive a terrifying consequence. That was the day the Great Flood came. Billions of tons of water poured down to cleanse the entire disgusting mass of hybrid DNA, sweep away the blood-soaked empires, and drown the giant army of the Nephilim beneath deep mud. God used water itself to purify his creation. But what about the ringleaders, the rebellious Watchers who had caused all those crimes? Do you think they flew back to heaven and lived peacefully without consequence? Absolutely not. The Book of Enoch records the most chilling and fitting sentence for those who dared to rebel. God sent the archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, directly down to earth to hunt them. Azazel, the one who brought weapons and corruption down to the world, was bound tightly, hand and foot, and thrown straight into a deep pit filled with sharp stones in a dark desert. The leader Semjaza and the remaining 200 Watchers were captured alive and forced to witness their Nephilim children slaughtering one another to death. After that, all of them were chained and shackled, then cast straight down into the deepest abyss beneath the earth, imprisoned in eternal darkness to await the final judgment. No mercy, no chance for redemption. That is a firm declaration echoing through the history of the universe. Evil may erupt, manipulate, and spread terror, but truth and goodness will always triumph over evil. Rebellious powers, no matter how earth-shaking their strength may be, must ultimately bow their heads and receive the fitting sentence of payment for their crimes. Satan lost his giant hybrid army, and he also lost his finest subordinate generals. His biological genocide plan against humanity in the Book of Enoch failed miserably, shattered beneath the waves of the Great Flood. And yet, the remnants of this war still remained. The bodies of the Nephilim died, but their dark spirits could not dissolve, becoming invisible evil spirits lurking everywhere. And Satan, an old fox backed into a corner, decided he would no longer play on the surface of the earth. He withdrew and established a far more terrifying matrix of manipulation, hovering right above humanity in layers of space that human eyes cannot see. Take a deep breath. The fourth forbidden file. The Ascension of Isaiah will take you away from Earth through the dimensions of space to see the true face of the powers ruling the heavens. After the Nephilim chess pieces were drowned by the flood, Satan realized one thing: waging direct war on the ground was far too risky a move. He could easily be seized and wiped out by God. So he changed tactics. He no longer wanted to operate like a street gang. He upgraded into an invisible criminal corporation. He moved his headquarters into a space located right above the earth, an unseen heaven that ordinary human eyes cannot see. The Ascension of Isaiah tells how the prophet Isaiah was taken by an angel to tour the seven heavens. But the most terrifying thing is not in the highest heavens. It is right at the first stopping point, the layer of air suspended directly above humanity, called in the ancient language the firmament. The moment Isaiah stepped into this layer of space, he witnessed a scene of death. The moment the prophet Isaiah passed through the veil of space and entered the first heaven, the firmament, what greeted him was not radiant light or peace. It was harsh roaring. He stepped straight into a real battlefield, a gigantic invisible slaughterhouse hanging directly above humanity. The book portrays this region like a cage packed tightly with darkness. It is dense with demons, fallen angels, and countless evil spirits. Do you still remember the Nephilim giants in the Book of Enoch? Their enormous bodies were crushed into mud by the waters of the flood. But their dark spirits could not be destroyed. Denied entry into heaven, yet not cast straight down into hell, they were trapped at this very boundary. They became hungry shadows drifting through a cramped space full of rage and hatred. Even more haunting is the image of them constantly biting, trampling, and fighting chaotically for rank, a chaos of jealousy, resentment, and betrayal. The strong tear apart the weak, exactly like a pack of starving wild beasts locked together in an iron cage. They hate God. They crave the destruction of humanity, and they even hate their own kind. That entire space boils with violence and corruption. And yet the terrifying thing is this. No matter how violently they tear at one another, all of that chaos is still under the absolute rule and manipulation of one leader, Satan. The prophet Isaiah recorded this chilling scene precisely in the original text. And we ascended into the firmament. And there I saw Samael, Satan, and his armies. A great war was taking place. The angels of Satan were envious and tearing at one another. And everything on earth happens in the same way, because what takes place on earth is a copy of what is taking place in the firmament. Did you hear that final sentence clearly? What takes place on earth is a copy of the firmament. To understand it most easily, imagine this layer of space as a massive invisible broadcasting station covering the entire earth. From this hidden base, Satan and his allies constantly broadcast dark signals down into humanity. They pump envy, greed, deception, and the craving for power into human minds. They pull the strings of leaders, stir up nations, and push them to carry weapons against one another. What is the purpose of this system? It is to create a thick fog covering the world. Satan wants human beings always busy with killing, competing, and chasing money so that no one has time to look higher to where the true God is. He wants to make the world so noisy and tragic that human beings mistakenly believe that God does not exist or that he has abandoned this earth. The book exposes a harsh truth. The bloody history of humanity is not a series of random events. The senseless wars that drain the lives of millions, the horrifying crimes committed in the shadows, and the extreme corruption of empires do not arise naturally. They are the result of a psychological manipulation script already programmed from that base hovering right above our heads. Look deeply at the way the world truly operates. Satan and the evil spirits have always been silently watching and secretly planning harm against human beings. He manipulates people and stirs up greed, arrogance, and fear within them. He pumps paranoia into the minds of leaders and awakens extreme jealousy between blood brothers, exactly the way he poured poison into Cain's ear to kill Abel. Over time, human sin grows deeper and deeper until people can no longer escape it. And the demons sit in the firmament watching with satisfaction as human beings turn themselves into violent chess pieces. That is the perfect control matrix. But would God, the Father of us human beings, allow Satan to spread that dark net across the sky and suffocate all humanity in ignorance? Certainly not. Satan can manipulate the mind. He can create war. But there is one thing he always longs to destroy at any cost: the truth. He knows that as long as the word of the Creator still exists on earth, his brainwashing matrix will sooner or later be pierced. For thousands of years, the devil has pulled the strings of countless tyrants to burn scripture, slaughter prophets, and erase every written record about God. But he miscalculated the power of the light. No matter how violently demons tear through this world, God always has a way to protect the human beings he created with his own hand from ancient times. His word remains in its most complete form despite every fire of war and the merciless destruction of time. And that is when we step into the final file, the historic closing blow of the Ethiopian church, the Garima Gospels. Remember carefully, this is no longer an invisible vision in the heavens. This is a real artifact, the strongest physical evidence on earth. While the rest of the world sank into centuries of darkness and war, God hid the world's oldest illustrated gospel manuscript on an extremely rugged mountain in Ethiopia. Completely isolated from the claws of the devil, the intact survival of the Garima Gospels for more than 1,500 years is the fatal blow that shatters every effort by the Lord of Darkness to cover up the truth. He may defile the sky, but he can never touch the Word of God. Are you ready to behold this inviolable treasure with your own eyes? Forbidden book number 5, the Garima Gospels. Welcome back to Earth. We have traveled from Adam's stone cave, through Solomon's throne, up to the mountain peak of the Nephilim giants, and through the heavens of Isaiah. Now look at something you can witness with your own eyes and touch with your own hands. An artifact that completely collapses the devil's matrix of lies, the Garima Gospels. Look directly at history. What is Satan's most basic and cowardly tactic for silencing humanity? Burning books, erasing written records. He knows that if he wants to control the future, he must cut human beings off from the past. For thousands of years, the devil has pulled the strings of Roman Empire's tyrants and bloody religious wars to hunt down and burn every original manuscript containing the Word of God. He wanted to push humanity into an age of darkness where he alone could rewrite the truth. Even more cruelly, this was a systematic campaign, global in scale and manipulated by Satan's servants all across the world. Go back to the Roman Empire in the year 303 after Christ. Emperor Diocletian issued one of the bloodiest great purges in history. But do you know what the #1 target in his decree was? It was not killing people. It was hunting down and burning all biblical scrolls. Why would one of the most powerful empires in the world be afraid of a few parchment scrolls? Because the devil pulling the strings behind it understood one principle very well. When you kill one person, you only extinguish one life. But when you burn the original Word of God, you extinguish the truth for hundreds of generations that follow. He wanted to tear out by the roots the only thread connecting humanity with the light. And that script did not stop with Rome. Throughout the Middle Ages, those fires continued to burn. Bible translations were hunted down fiercely. Scholars who dared to translate the Word of God into common languages, so ordinary people could read it, such as William Tyndale, were arrested, tied to stakes, and burned alive along with their own books. The devil was terrified when humanity could read the original truth with its own eyes. He only wanted people to blindly follow distorted doctrines manipulated by corrupt rulers who had sold their souls to him. Even in the modern world, this pattern repeats itself with cruelty. Whenever a tyrannical dictatorship rises, those most heavily manipulated by that dark broadcasting station from the firmament, their first action is always to gather books and set them on fire, erase archives, persecute people of faith, smash places of worship. You do not need to look far back into feudal times. Look directly at what has been happening in China for decades. The severe religious persecution there is a perfect copy, a real-life proof of the devil's script for silencing humanity. Millions of Christians there have been forced to hide worshiping in underground churches. The authorities storm in and tear down crosses, with cranes confiscate and burn mountains of Bibles in broad daylight. At the same time, millions of Falun Gong practitioners have been arrested, tortured, and thrown into forced labor camps, while their moral teaching books have been destroyed on a massive scale. All because they firmly hold on to a righteous faith and refuse to submit to worldly power. And that brutality has also struck directly against the Uyghur Muslim community in Xinjiang. Thousands of mosques have been flattened without mercy. Sacred Qurans have been confiscated and burned. Millions of people have been driven into massive re-education camps meant to brainwash them and force them to completely deny their religious roots. Why would a gigantic power system armed to the teeth with armies, weapons, and technology be afraid of ordinary people who only pray and meditate? Why do they have to frantically hunt down and burn paper books? Because the devil pulling the strings behind them understands very clearly faith is the only thing that creates people who cannot be manipulated. When a human being knows how to look up to God, they will never kneel before dark powers on earth. This book-burning imprisonment and bloody persecution is not merely political. It is a desperate effort to cut humanity off from the light, to create an empty, godless generation, so the devil can easily stuff it with his ideology of control. It is a global campaign of oppression running across thousands of years, fierce and merciless. The demons want to push humanity into an age of darkness where Satan can monopolize the rewriting of truth. But God was one step ahead of Satan. To fully express the greatness of this event in the most practical, direct, and easy to understand words, use the expanded version below. It will crush every bit of vagueness and show the audience how astonishing this physical miracle truly is. But God was far ahead of Satan. He did not hide his most sacred original manuscript in Jerusalem or Rome. Those were the places considered the navel of the universe, always coveted by empires and constantly torn apart by thousands of wars. If the book had been kept there, it would have been burned immediately. Instead, God chose a place no one expected, the Tigray Mountains of Ethiopia. This place is an unbreakable natural fortress with steep, rugged cliffs, completely isolated from the outside world. He turned the very land the devil once tried to brainwash into a stone vault to protect his word. Around the late 5th century, a monk from the Byzantine Empire named Abba Garima traveled all the way to this remote mountain region. There is a famous Ethiopian oral tradition that tells this story. Abba Garima copied the entire book by hand in exactly one day. And when the sun was about to set, while the work was still unfinished, God caused the sun to stand still in the sky, so he would have enough light to complete the final stroke. For many years, Western scholars laughed at this story. With their prejudice, they assumed that an African country could not possibly possess a treasure that ancient. They confidently declared that the book could have been written no earlier than the 11th century. But in the year 2010, a team of experts had the book tested. Using carbon-14 dating technology, the most accurate scientific measurement method available today. The results struck the arrogance of Western scholarship like a thunderbolt and left everyone silent. The Garima Gospels truly originated around the years 390 to 570 after Christ. This scientific truth makes it the oldest surviving illustrated Bible manuscript in the world. The fact that this book remains intact until today is not only history, it is an undeniable physical miracle. Think about it realistically. A paper book kept in a house for a few decades already turns yellow, grows mold, and tears apart. Yet the Garima Gospels were not kept in a vacuum glass case. There were no air conditioners around them and no preservation chemicals at all. The book consists of 2 thick volumes written entirely on goat skin. And yet, after more than 1,500 years, the ancient Ge'ez letters remain extremely sharp, and the illustrations still keep their brilliant colors as if they had just been painted. It survived centuries of harsh weather. It escaped the erosion of time, the plundering of enemies, and passed intact through countless fires that once burned down surrounding monasteries. While Satan was busy inciting empires to slaughter one another and frantically burn books in Europe and the Middle East, the word of the Creator lay quietly, absolutely safe on a mountaintop in Africa. The Garima Gospels are the final knockout blow delivered straight into Satan's face. Their flesh and blood existence proves an iron truth. Demons can manipulate the mind. They can spread war. They can contaminate human DNA or incite dictators to rewrite history. But they can never ever touch or erase the truth of God. But stay alert. If you think that once the Garima Gospels were safely protected on the mountaintop, the powers of darkness sadly gave up and the world became peaceful, that would be a deadly mistake. Satan is a master of psychological tactics. When he realized he could not destroy the original of the truth, he immediately turned to a new page in his plan. No longer wasting effort hunting down parchment scrolls, he aimed his invisible broadcasting station straight at a target 1,000 times easier to invade and manipulate the human mind, especially young souls still unsteady as they search for their identity. In the modern world, evil does not need to appear in a terrifying form to frighten people. It hides itself, slips into the hidden corners of society, and borrows the hands and blindness of human beings to spread shocking tragedies. Satan is haunting the youth of the world. Let us reopen the file of America in the summer of 1984. The entire city of Los Angeles was surrounded by a suffocating atmosphere and extreme unease, beginning with the mysterious death of a 79-year-old woman named Jenny Vinkow. 13 horrifying tragedies followed one after another. The perpetrator acted coldly, like a shadow, taking the lives of innocent people without reason, without even a clear motive. But what chilled investigators and the entire United States to the bone was not the method of the crimes. It was the message he deliberately left at the scenes. At the places where these tragedies occurred, a strange and haunting symbol repeatedly appeared, an inverted 5-pointed star, the signature symbol of groups that exalt darkness. The one who spread that terror was Richard Ramirez, the man known by the nickname the Night Stalker. When law enforcement finally captured him and brought him to court in the year 1989, Ramirez's attitude was what truly outraged the public. At the age of 29, standing before the highest sentence, he showed no fear and no remorse. Instead, he raised his palm, tattooed with a 5-pointed star, looked straight at the judge and the media cameras, and coldly declared, "I am beyond good and evil." He lives in all of us, referring to the Lord of Darkness. Do you see what is terrifying here? Ramirez was not merely an out-of-control criminal. His life is a perfect example of psychological brainwashing by dark powers. From a boy gradually drifting away from foundational moral values, he began sinking into occult books and frenzied music that glorified evil. The distorted signal from the air caught his frequency, corroded his reason, stripped away his humanity, and turned him into a blind instrument for acts that can never be tolerated. Then, on October 24, 2018, America was stunned by a report from Bartow, Florida. This had been a peaceful town home to a large religious community, but right in the center of that peace, a shocking plot had been coldly planned. And the most shocking part, the authors of that plan were two schoolgirls, only 11 and 12 years old. Security forces and school administrators intervened in time, secured the scene inside a restroom, and successfully stopped a tragedy before it could erupt. During the search, police confiscated a series of sharp objects from paring knives and a cleaver to other kitchen tools, along with cups prepared specifically for a chilling sacrificial ritual. Who were their targets? Younger, weaker students. But what truly haunted investigators was not that pile of lifeless weapons, but the motive behind it. This plan did not come from childish impulsiveness, resentment, or ordinary school bullying. The messages recovered from the two girls' phones exposed a truth that sends a chill down the spine. They wanted to create an unprecedented tragedy, then end everything themselves at the school gate for one single purpose: to go to hell and serve Satan. The final message they sent to each other before the planned act was written with frightening calm. Today is health lesson. Thanks Satan, because we are doing this. Sheriff Joe Hall, a man with long experience facing crime, had to say during a press conference visibly shaken last night. When I sat and watched the interview process with the two girls, I was convinced that this was absolutely not a childish prank. Do you see how terrifying this psychological matrix is? Demons do not need horns or claws. Satan's cruelty lies in the way he bends. Reason shapes violent thoughts and disguises them under the shell of an imaginary power or immortality. He strikes directly at the easily stimulated psychology of teenagers, at their desire to explore hidden dark corners, turning young souls into tools serving evil without them even realizing it. And Bartow, Florida is not the only place. This invisible brainwashing network is stretching its tentacles across the globe, creating a matrix of darkness-worshipping crime with statistics that will make you shudder. As you can see, this is absolutely a brutal reality, rooted right in the middle of the modern world, far beyond ancient legends or dusty parchment pages. So what is the real plot of Satan and this dark church? Their core axis revolves around one cruel strategy: completely overturning humanity's value system. They turn sin into freedom. They turn corruption into personal power. They label every moral law as slavery and glorify extreme selfishness as the measure of success. The ultimate goal of Satanism is to brainwash human beings, making them believe that they themselves are the only gods of their own lives. When a person believes he is God, he will be ready to trample every other life in order to satisfy his desires. The devil's scheme is subtle because he steals the human soul through people's own willingness. He turns victims into accomplices intoxicated with sin. The consequence of this brainwashing matrix is a global network of darkness-worshipping crime spreading at a terrifying speed. Look directly at the real numbers. In Italy, right next to the Vatican, police have confirmed the existence of at least 8,000 underground groups, worshipping demons, drawing in more than 600,000 members. The situation escalated to the point that the church had to launch a special anti-cult unit called SAS to protect sacred areas. Meanwhile, in France, darkness has grown into an industry. As many as 40,000 self-proclaimed witches and dark sorcerers are operating openly, creating a massive money-making machine through spells and dark spiritual services, earning tens of billions of francs each year. In South Africa, the dark network has broken through the walls of schools. Police were shocked to discover groups of students between the ages of 11 and 13 forming secret societies in parks. Every Wednesday and Friday, they gathered to carry out chilling animal sacrifice rituals and cut themselves with knives, wounding their own bodies. They fantasized that using physical pain would exchange for ultimate power. In the United States, Shane West Holter, director of the National Information Network, released a report that shattered every sense of complacency among parents. As many as 30 to 40% of high school students had been drawn into dark occult rituals. Even more shocking, 70% of juvenile criminals under the age of 17 had direct connections with secret societies worshiping demons. The truth is right before our eyes. Satan's control matrix has never been extinguished. The dark force that once manipulated the heavens in the book of Isaiah has now rooted itself deeply into every corner of modern society. Satan only needs to pull the strings from behind, distort reason, and let human beings, especially the younger generation, drain one another's lives every day with their own hands. Many people still mistakenly think these shadowy rituals are only temporary acts of youthful impulsiveness. In reality, they are true dark contracts where human beings willingly hand over their reason. Once demons seize the mind, they will control that blinded reason and drive it to commit the most horrifying crimes, exactly like what Richard Ramirez and the 2 schoolgirls in Florida did. And to understand the source of this cruel illusion, we must reopen the file of the night of April 30th, 1966. A moment calculated with extreme precision. In the world of Western occultism, this night is called Walpurgisnacht, the time when darkness is believed to rise most powerfully. Right in San Francisco, United States, a man named Anton LaVey shaved his head, wrapped himself in a pitch-black robe, and boldly declared the founding of the Church of Satan. LaVey's action was an extremely cunning move. He exploited America's own law of religious freedom to place a legal cloak over his dark organization. He opened wide a door for darkness to walk proudly into the human world. 3 years later, LaVey released the Satanic Bible, officially completing one of the devil's greatest brainwashing toolkits. He removed the cheap magic spells and stuffed into it a toxic ideology, promoting selfishness, glorifying desire, and teaching human beings how to trample every moral boundary in order to satisfy themselves. But to draw millions of people into their den, they apply extremely sophisticated manipulation tactics. Instead of using force, they lure their prey through sensory manipulation and crowd psychology. Step inside the closed rooms of these groups, and you are immediately drowned inside a perfectly staged psychological theater designed to collapse every defense barrier of reason. The most infamous and disgusting among these is the ritual known as the Black Mass. Picture this scene. The atmosphere is suffocating thick with the smell of incense and lit by flickering black candles. Across the walls are inverted 5-pointed stars, and broken crosses a direct mockery, an extreme challenge against the Creator. To create a hallucination for curious souls, they use sacred prayers, but deliberately read them backward from bottom to top. The madness reaches its peak when they destroy ordinary stone or wooden altars. In their place, they use the human body itself as a living altar. Against a dark, groaning background of music, robed officiants mutter incantations in ancient languages such as Latin or Enochian. The combination of eerie sound, flickering light, and stimulating fragrance creates sensory overload, forcing the participant's brain into a state of paralysis and extreme excitement. Their spectacular deception lies in this: they take corrupt behavior and sexual depravity, then package it as a high-level and mysterious spiritual experience. They aim straight at the easiest prey, the younger generation. They persuade students to run away from home, lure the children of Christian families into strange parties in the dark, where every moral boundary is erased. Once they step into that space, under the collective force of a frenzied crowd, the minds of young people are completely knocked down. Participants begin to hallucinate that they are special beings, superior individuals, standing above every law of humanity. Through the trick of concept substitution, they label corruption as freedom and call rebellion unmatched power. Blind teenagers think they are being liberated and breaking the chains of society. But in reality, they are turning themselves into obedient puppets for this dark system to control and pull by the strings. Stay awake, young people. Warning from a psychiatric expert. Demons are increasingly possessing human bodies. Yes, many people keep thinking that science and religion can never be in harmony. But reality has proven the opposite. Today, countless leading scientific minds have returned and placed their full faith in the Creator. A striking example is a veteran psychiatrist in the United States who has issued a firm statement. Countless strange psychological disorders and extreme phenomena erupting around the world today originate directly from demonic interference. And humanity is entering a stage of awakening in order to recognize this threat clearly. Dr. Richard Gallagher, an outstanding scholar who graduated from two of America's most prestigious universities, Princeton and Yale, has stepped forward to confirm this entire truth. Moving beyond the narrow limits of modern medicine, he exposes a brutal reality. Demons are quietly manipulating the minds of humanity, and their network is covering every corner of our world. With 25 years of experience facing the darkest corners of the human psyche, Dr. Gallagher clearly points out the boundary between a genuine human being and someone seized by demons. That boundary appears very clearly in the way they think and act. In an interview with the famous Telegraph, he exposed the tactics of demons. Darkness possesses an extremely perfect art of deception and psychological control because of a level of awareness far superior to that of human beings. They hide in invisible dimensions, completely concealed from our sight. He said, "They are very, very much smarter than we are, like fallen angels." That is what I can picture them as. One easily visible sign that demons exist around us is found in people suffering from mental illness. Modern medicine currently believes that people with this condition must constantly face hallucinations, including visual hallucinations and auditory hallucinations, with auditory hallucinations being the most common. When these auditory hallucinations grow stronger and become part of consciousness, they will dominate the patient's spirit as well as behavior. For example, when a psychiatrist uses psychotherapy to weaken an auditory hallucination, those auditory hallucinations may transform the doctor into a threat against them. This proves that these hallucinations truly have life and are aware of what is happening. There are even cases where an auditory hallucination knows in advance that the doctor is coming to the hospital room, or that a treatment method is about to be used, and then tells the patient to escape from there. Through observation, we can know the purpose behind demons. They want human beings to trust modern science more and more, to believe that there is no existence of God or demons at all, that those are only prehistoric or medieval fantasies, or that textbooks do not teach those things. They rejoice when human beings do not believe the teachings of divine beings and Buddhas about demons, causing us to believe that science is supreme, and that anything beyond the understanding of science must be considered superstition. As a consequence, millions of people around the world lose human morality and drift away from traditional culture. One example is found in the spiritual life of human beings, with specific evidence in the entertainment industry. And to expose this truth, let us shine an X-ray directly into the most terrifying tool of mass manipulation, the music industry. Music possesses a power to control the mind far beyond ordinary measurement. For teenagers in an unstable stage, always craving the affirmation of identity, they can completely lose self-control. Before stimulating rhythms, frantic choreography, and the passionate roar of the crowd. Right now, what is called popular culture is in reality a collection of musical products designed to shock, striking directly at primal instinct. And rock and roll is the symbolic pioneering tool. Putting aside judgment of the personal faith of individual artists, let us look at the historical truth. Dark symbols have blended perfectly into the roots of this music and have sunk deeply into it. Going back to the 1960s and 1970s, a series of famous rock bands from Britain and the United States, such as the Beatles, the American Coven, and Black Widow, actively brought imagery of Satanism into their works. Whether this came from carelessness or deliberate intent, it succeeded brilliantly in spreading dark messages straight into the subconscious of young people around the world. In the 1960s, the Beatles rose like an empire of absolute domination. This powerful quartet, under the leadership of John Lennon, climbed to the highest position of all time. Their music slipped into every corner of the streets, occupied every household, and created storms of frenzy wherever they set foot. The ideological manipulation appears extremely clearly right on the cover of the legendary album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. This image gathers a list of figures representing lifestyles that reject faith, promote the breaking of tradition, and liberate instinct standards that match perfectly with satanic doctrine. The crowd can easily recognize figures such as Karl Marx, H.G. Wells, George Bernard Shaw, and especially the presence of Aleister Crowley, the man who called himself the Great Beast against God. Many people excuse it by saying the Beatles were only expressing youthful rebellion. But in March of 1966, John Lennon delivered a direct blow that shocked the Christian community. In an interview with Evening Standard magazine, Lennon arrogantly declared, "Christianity will go, it will vanish and shrink. I needn't argue about that. I am right and will be proved right. We're more popular than Jesus now. I don't know which will go first, rock and roll or Christianity." In their homeland of Britain, society at that time had gradually lost tradition and faith, so the public responded with cold indifference. But when this crossed into the United States, where the foundation of faith was still deeply rooted, that arrogance immediately ignited an earthquake. 5 months later, Datebook reprinted the entire interview, creating a fierce wave of outrage. American conservatives condemned it harshly. Priests directly set fire to mountains of the band's albums, and parents completely forbade their children from coming into contact with any products by the Beatles. In reality, the phenomenon of the Beatles went far beyond spontaneous rebellion. It carried the clear mark of manipulation by dark forces. Words we use every day, such as rock, teenager, cool, and pop music, were originally hidden codes containing the soft power of this band. And they have now sunk deep into the cultural DNA of the entire world. Moving into the 1980s, extremism continued to escalate with heavy metal. Bands such as Deicide, Morbid Angel, and Entombed openly incorporated symbols of Satan, worship along with images of demons and the undead. The harsh distortion of electric guitars, combined with violent drum rhythms, directly triggered the listener's instincts of violence and wild desire. A series of famous bands continued feeding this poison to audiences. The Rolling Stones promoted sexual corruption in Street Fighting Man and called on the crowd to respond to the demands of the devil in sympathy for the devil. Meanwhile, AC/DC proudly screamed their pride in the song Highway to Hell with the lyric, "Hey Satan, I'm on the highway to hell." John Lennon's greatest hit, the song Imagine, is in reality a call for listeners to build a godless world with their own hands. The opening line, "Imagine there's no heaven," calls human beings to erase the existence of heaven, eliminate every religion, and remove property ownership in order to gather the world into one single system. Look directly at the consequences. When human beings erase national boundaries, throw away religion, and smash the institution of private marriage, what remains will be heaven or hell. History has already proven that these ideas will tear apart the entire moral foundation of humanity. Their deception matches perfectly with the follow your natural instincts lifestyle that Satanism promotes. The inevitable result? is always the explosion of adultery, violence, moral decline, drugs, and the complete rejection of the Creator. And the darkness manipulates fairly. If rock and roll was the tool used to conquer white youth, then hip-hop was born to carry out a similar mission targeting the minds of the Black community. We need to look at their foundation. According to a report from the Pew Research Center in the United States, Black Americans were once a community that placed absolute faith in God. The survey shows that 75% of Black Americans affirm that faith carries ultimate meaning in life. The number of people choosing an atheist lifestyle or rejecting religious systems accounted for only an extremely tiny proportion. Religion was once the source of strength and a living part of Black Americans in the United States. However, the social barriers of that time pushed Black artists away from mainstream stages. Taking advantage of that resentment, hip-hop was officially born in New York in the 1970s. At first, it rose as a tool of resistance against poverty and injustice. They used breakdance, a form of dance that shattered every traditional standard, and graffiti spray paint art that stained the streets to release frustration. But very quickly, dark forces injected poison into hip-hop lyrics. The lyrics began drilling deeply into the glorification of violence, guns, pornography, corruption, and racial hatred. Beyond all expectations, rap and breakdance exploded into a global storm. Hip-hop crossed oceans, capturing the cultures of Asia, Europe, and African cities. Despite the moral collapse clearly exposed in its lyrics, where reckless sex, killing, and drugs are exalted as a new value system, this music still receives frantic praise from young people all over the world. With rock and roll as the invention used to manipulate white people, and hip-hop born as a special privilege to capture Black people, Satanism completed the net over the entire global music market. Today we can easily recognize the corruption of countless stars in the entertainment industry. They are living and performing according to one shared pattern programmed by demons passionately worshiping material things, showing off supercars and expensive jewelry, promoting narcissistic individualism, abusing stimulants, and sinking into sexual corruption. Even on major stages, they casually put on the appearance of demons, turning performances into public rituals honoring darkness. The truth is, the entertainment industry is only the opening move in a cruel campaign on a global scale. Those demonic performances on stage are the public manifesto of darkness. The devil has scattered traces of manipulation through every layer of modern society. It is time for us to piece together every broken fragment of history. Follow these clues and expose their entire plan to control the world. Hold on to your seat and focus carefully, because we are about to step straight into the heart of the file, tracing the footprints of Satan and the conspiracies haunting humanity today. Indeed, Satan is not a rumor. He truly exists among mankind. Charles Baudelaire, a French poet of the 19th century, once wrote, in essence, "The cleverest trick of the devil is to persuade people that he does not exist at all." And indeed, in our minds, Satan or demons are something vague products of imagination that only exist in Harry Potter or horror stories. We cling to that belief so firmly that if someone talks about demons, we turn around and laugh at his foolishness. So even though the Holy Bible has revealed a great deal about Satan for the past 2,000 years, people have read the Bible as if they were reading a mythological story. Even when Satan does not bother hiding and leaves his own handwriting behind, people still dare not believe it and only treat it as a vague mystery. Legend says that in the early 13th century, a monk from a Benedictine monastery in Bohemia was sentenced to life imprisonment inside a sealed room. To escape the punishment, he proposed that he would write a book containing all the knowledge of humanity in a single night. But then he realized he could not fulfill his promise. In panic and despair, the monk begged Satan for help, even if it meant exchanging his own soul. As a result, the monk completed what is considered the largest handwritten book of the Middle Ages. weighing 75 kilograms and requiring 2 people to carry it. Besides the large number of demonic illustrations in the book, people also found a self-portrait of Satan on page 577. The book was named Codex Gigas, also called the Devil's Bible, and it is still preserved today at the National Library of Sweden in Stockholm. There are many similar stories, either falling into oblivion, being dismissed as fabrications, or becoming unsolved mysteries. But no matter how much human beings deny the truth and call it fantasy, there is still one being laughing at mankind's ignorance. That being is Satan. And Satan, the one who fell from heaven, has hidden in the night for a long time and is now rising. This is not a figure of speech. It is the truth. A naked truth people do not dare believe is real. His core strategy is extremely clear. Incite humanity to betray and reject the Creator himself. Look back at human history. From east to west, every ancient civilization has preserved a shared memory God or the Creator formed human beings in his image. From the Western tradition of Jehovah to the Eastern tradition of Nuwa, God established a moral system as a compass to help us find the way back to the heavenly kingdom. He also marked out red lines to protect the purity of the universe. When morality collapses completely, that corrupted civilization will be erased. The catastrophe of the Great Flood is the clearest historical proof. To maintain that moral compass, enlightened beings and great prophets have continuously descended to earth. Moses and Jesus in the west, Socrates in Greece, and Laozi and Shakyamuni in the east. They taught human beings to distinguish good from evil, to recognize righteousness and wickedness, and to preserve faith while waiting for the final moment of salvation. Satan understands one life and death law very well. As long as he can cut the connection between human beings and God, morality will evaporate and society will destroy itself, exactly like the legendary continent of Atlantis buried beneath the sea in a single night. In the East, to uproot a God-believing culture that had been deeply rooted for 5,000 years. The communist evil spirit used brutal violence, murdered the entire elite class that protected tradition, and then indoctrinated atheism into generation after generation. In the West, where democratic nations still preserved faith, they used infiltration and deception to completely corrupt mainstream religions. First, in the East, historical truth is written clearly in the Communist Manifesto. Their ultimate goal is to smash the family, erase the nation, and completely destroy religion. Karl Marx, a man who once believed in God but later turned into a follower of Satan, understood human psychology very well. He knew humanity would be alert and resist if forced to worship demons. Therefore, he released a perfect weapon, atheism, accompanied by the slogan, "Religion is the opium of the people." Marx calculated with extreme cunning, as long as human beings threw away God, their minds would immediately become empty houses for demons to freely enter and occupy. The lyrics of their song expose this arrogance. There is no savior. We must rely completely on ourselves. If Marx used theory to poison people, then Lenin and Stalin used gun barrels to bathe them in blood. As soon as Lenin seized power in 1917, he immediately activated a large-scale campaign to exterminate religion. In 1922, he issued a secret order. All church property must be confiscated and the entire clergy must be eliminated so that for several decades, they will not dare even to think of resistance. A series of monasteries were closed and thousands of Orthodox monks and clergy were slaughtered. Stalin inherited this bloody legacy with the 5-year plan of atheism. According to statistics, more than 42,000 priests were persecuted to death. By 1939, out of 40,400 churches, the entire Soviet Union had only a little more than 100 still open. The entire elite and religious class was sent into the infamous Gulag concentration camps, or executed by firing squad. But the cruelty did not stop at killing. Realizing that they could not completely eliminate people of faith, the KGB, the Soviet secret police agency, changed tactics, control religion from within. The most typical example is Alexei II, who climbed to the position of Patriarch of Moscow. After the Soviet Union collapsed, declassified KGB files exposed the truth. Alexei II was a genuine KGB agent. He later had to publicly confess and ask for forgiveness because he had betrayed believers and become a puppet of the government. Under the hand of the evil spirit, the church was turned into a gigantic brainwashing machine, and it did not stop there. After taking control of the East, the demons stretched their claws into the free world. They used money and spies to infiltrate directly into the leadership structures of Western religions. In 1953, the documentary The Plot to Destroy America by producer Curtis Bowers publicized testimony that shocked the entire United States Congress. The man who testified was Manning Johnson, a former high-ranking Communist Party member who decided to expose the truth. Johnson described a cold strategy. The shortest way to destroy the church is to put clerical robes on agents and send them to work inside the churches. The goal of this infiltration campaign was extremely clear. They wanted to brainwash the clergy. Instead of allowing priests to preach spiritual values and morality, these agents would redirect sermons toward left-wing political movements and stir up material greed. Even more subtly, they aimed directly at the root seminaries where future priests are trained. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, waves of agents disguised themselves as lecturers, personally shaping generations of priests with distorted thinking. These men in clerical robes later spread everywhere, becoming perfect tools to sow chaos and sabotage the moral foundation of American society. But do not think this network was limited only to the United States. Its octopus-like tentacles stretched out to grasp the entire world. Let us look at one of the most powerful religious organizations in the world. The World Council of Churches, abbreviated as WCC, an organization representing more than 590 million Christian believers. Based on newly declassified top-secret files, historian Momchil Metodiev and Professor Christopher Andrew from the prestigious University of Cambridge have proven a shocking truth. This entire gigantic organization was completely manipulated by the KGB intelligence agency. How did the KGB manipulate it? Through money and power. The WCC openly received huge financial support from communist countries. In exchange, the KGB pushed its own people directly into the highest positions. They pushed Bishop Nicodemus, a genuine KGB agent, into the seat of WCC president in 1975. At the same time, they planted Agent Todor Sabev into the position of Deputy General Secretary, allowing him to control this organization for 14 long years. And when darkness held the authority to operate it, they began doing horrifying things under the cover of religion. The WCC brazenly extracted money from its funds to support notorious guerrilla groups in Zimbabwe. These were terrorist groups known for hunting down and killing missionaries and innocent civilians. The cruelty became even clearer in China. When visiting that country, the WCC General Secretary obediently shook hands and worked with the puppet religious organizations created by the government. He coldly turned his back and completely ignored millions of believers in the underground churches. People being hunted, imprisoned, and bloodily persecuted every day simply because they insisted on preserving true faith. The expansion of darkness into Western society covered every corner. To destroy faith, they manufactured extremely sophisticated verbal weapons. The most typical examples are two concepts: separation of church and state and political correctness. Look at the United States, a nation built on a foundation of trust in God. Throughout its history, every elected president placed his hand on the Bible to take the oath of office. Religion once served as the compass protecting the morality of society. But today that compass is being smashed. When true believers courageously stand up to oppose morally corrupt policies or condemn actions that seriously violate the laws of the Creator, such as reckless abortion, the left immediately uses the slogan, "separation of church and state," to silence them. Their intention is extremely sinister: force religion to stand outside the margins of every social decision. As a result, modern human beings are only allowed to praise God when they obediently sit within the four walls of a church. The moment they step out onto the street, they are stripped completely of the right to speak up and stop evil. Once religion is stripped of its function of protecting morality, American society immediately slides down into the abyss. This pressure is pushed to an extreme level through the weapon of political correctness. In a nation built from Christianity, people are now afraid to say Merry Christmas. They are threatened with the accusation of offending other religions. In reality, every true faith has its own way of honoring God, and discrimination is completely absent from hearts directed toward goodness. They are only deliberately swapping concepts to spread fear. The education front has also witnessed a similar massacre of thought. Across schools, every lesson about the Creator and traditional values is strictly forbidden on the grounds of lacking scientific evidence. By contrast, atheism and the theory of evolution, even though full of anti-scientific holes, are openly indoctrinated into students' minds. The slander, trampling, and blasphemy against God are tolerated by law under the beautiful-sounding cover of protecting freedom of speech. But external prohibition is only half of the plan. To destroy religion completely, demons send agents wearing clerical robes deep inside the organizations. Throughout the last century, these spies actively distorted sacred texts and created monstrous ideologies. The peak came in the 1960s, when a series of strange theories such as revolutionary theology, theology of hope, and political theology were released, drowning the religious world in extreme chaos. Especially in Latin America, a Peruvian priest named Gustavo Gutierrez gave birth to a dangerous weapon called liberation theology. This theory is extremely toxic because it directly implants the ideas of class struggle and violent revolution into Scripture. It swaps concepts, turning the compassion of God into a command to mobilize violence in order to liberate the poor. They borrow the story of Jehovah leading the Jews out of Egypt to justify using violence to overthrow society. This theology that promotes class struggle was immediately praised openly by Fidel Castro, the leader of Cuba. Even more dangerously, although the traditional Catholic Church strongly opposed it, the Pope elected in 2013 paved the way for them. By inviting Gutierrez by name as an honored guest at a Vatican press conference in 2015, the current church leadership publicly gave the green light and quietly supported this distorted theory. From South America, the poison spread globally, giving birth to a series of grotesque variations such as black theology, women's theology, liberal theology, and most disastrous of all, the theology of the death of God. They tore apart orthodox beliefs and turned the church into an extremist political forum. And if you think these theories only cause damage on paper, look directly at the pool of blood in America in the 1970s. A man named Jim Jones founded the organization known as the People's Temple. He claimed to be the reincarnated embodiment of extremist leaders. He copied the doctrines of atheistic and violent theories directly into his core teaching. Under the cover of religious freedom, he openly preached on American soil to carry out his ambition of mass brainwashing. When authorities began sensing the cruelty of this organization, United States Congressman Leo Ryan personally led an investigative delegation straight to their lair. Knowing his plot had been exposed, the cult leader immediately ordered the congressman to be massacred. Right after that, history witnessed one of the most horrifying massacres of all. He forced all his followers to drink poison in a mass suicide. Those who woke up and refused the order to surrender their lives were immediately shot mercilessly by his henchmen. In the end, more than 900 lives were erased completely in a single night. That is the true nature of this demonic mob. They slander religion, extinguish people's faith in the Creator, and turn blind followers into sacrificial victims for the devil's ambition for power. For this reason, open your eyes wide to recognize every trap of manipulation surrounding your family and the younger generation every day. The ultimate weapon to smash this matrix is already in your hands: absolute faith in God. Anchor your reason firmly in the original truth of the Creator. Make prayer a required act every day. Prayer is the strongest steel shield protecting your soul. It is the direct line of communication through which you receive strength, clarity, and guidance from the highest light. When you firmly look up to the Creator, every dark force under the earth must retreat. And the truth of God endures forever. It can be seen. Whether in the east or the west, the methods may differ. But the final goal of Satanism has never changed. In the East, they use coercive violence, smash traditional culture, and deform the church in order to cut off the connection between human beings and God. In the West, they use money desire and lies to infiltrate, distort true religion, and cause the world to willingly surrender morality. This is a total campaign, a perfect closed matrix designed to uproot faith completely and turn humanity into an atheist generation with no historical memory. But for evil to truly take root in the mind of each individual, Satan knows that destroying the church is not enough. He needs a tool capable of slipping into every home, implanting toxic ideas directly into the minds of millions of people every day without them even realizing it. And that weapon is education. Let us start with some facts, because facts matter. And these particular facts have been remarkably under-discussed in public life. In the year 2007, a major survey of 1,417 full-time American university professors asked them to describe their political orientation. 44% called themselves liberal. Just over 9% called themselves conservative. In arts and humanities departments, the gap was even wider: 61% liberal, under 4% conservative. The most senior faculty, the ones who had been shaping academic culture for decades, leaned furthest left of all. By the year 2016, a study of voter registration among social science and history faculty at 40 leading American universities found a ratio of 11 registered Democrats for every 1 registered Republican. In history departments specifically, that ratio had reached 35-1. And here is the detail worth sitting with. In the year 1968, the same ratio in history departments had been 2.7-1. What happened between 1968 and 2016 was not a slow drift. It was a systematic transformation. Another 2016 survey found that in New England, home to Harvard, Yale, MIT, and much of the American establishment, the faculty ratio of liberals to conservatives stood at 28-1. At an American Enterprise Institute conference that same year, scholars reported that roughly 18% of American social scientists identified as Marxists, compared to 5% who identified as conservative. Senator Ted Cruz, describing his experience at a prestigious law school, put it plainly: there were more self-identified communists on the faculty than Republicans. If you asked them whether America should become a socialist state, 80% would vote yes, and the other 10% would say the idea was too conservative. Now, why does this matter? Because universities are not neutral warehouses of information. They are communities of intellectual practice. What the faculty believe, what questions they treat as settled, what views they reward, and which they penalize, shapes the intellectual formation of every student who passes through. If the institution is heavily tilted in one ideological direction, so will the education it provides. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to the 1960s. A generation of Western students came of age in that decade, shaped shaped by Marxist critical theory, in particular by the Frankfurt School, a group of German Jewish intellectuals who had fled Nazi Germany and settled largely at American universities. They were brilliant, they were prolific, and they were deeply hostile to the civilization that had produced both Nazism and American consumer capitalism. Their project was the systematic critique of Western culture from within. The protest movements of the 1960s against the Vietnam War for civil rights, and eventually against almost everything the established order represented, gave this intellectual framework a mass audience. Hundreds of thousands of students absorbed its categories: oppressor and oppressed ideology and false consciousness, hegemony and resistance. But then the protests ended. America withdrew from Vietnam in 1973. The marches stopped, and those radicalized students had to decide what to do next. Many of them went to graduate school. They studied literature, philosophy, sociology, journalism, and education. They completed their doctorates. They applied for academic positions, and they got them because the universities of the 1970s and early 1980s were expanding rapidly and needed staff. And because the hiring committees of that era were not by and large looking carefully at the ideological commitments of the candidates they were appointing. Their guide, though many may not have known it explicitly, was Antonio Gramsci, the Italian Marxist theorist who had argued in his prison notebooks that lasting revolutionary change did not require seizing state power by force. It required something more patient and more powerful. The capture of what he called the superstructure, the cultural institutions, the universities, the media, the legal profession, the arts through which a society's values are formed and transmitted. He called this the long march through the institutions. Herbert Marcuse, perhaps the most influential Frankfurt School figure for the American New Left, declared in 1974 that the radical movement was being reborn in the universities. He was not wrong. One radical professor reflecting on this period wrote with a candor unusual in academic prose, "After Vietnam, many of us did not return to literature. We entered academic positions. After the war ended, we seem to have disappeared. Now we have tenure, and the work of transforming the university has begun in earnest." That phrase, the work of transforming the university, deserves to be read carefully. This was not a project of expanding knowledge or challenging received opinion through better evidence and argument. It was a project of institutional transformation in the service of a political program. Once tenured, these scholars had significant power. They sat on hiring committees. They could and did screen out candidates whose intellectual commitments differed from their own. They shaped curriculum-approved dissertations and determined the direction of research. As the older generation of faculty retired, they were replaced almost exclusively by scholars trained in the same tradition. The university's intellectual monoculture was not a natural development. It was to a meaningful degree engineered. Let us start with some facts, because facts matter, and these particular facts have been remarkably under-discussed in public life. In the year 2007, a major survey of 1,417 full-time American university professors asked them to describe their political orientation. 44% called themselves liberal. Just over 9% called themselves conservative. In arts and humanities departments, the gap was even wider. 61% liberal, under 4% conservative. The most senior faculty, the ones who had been shaping academic culture for decades, leaned furthest left of all. By the year 2016, a study of voter registration among social science and history faculty at 40 leading American universities found a ratio of 11 registered Democrats for every one registered Republican. In history departments specifically, that ratio had reached 35-1. And here is the detail worth sitting with. In the year 1968, the same ratio in history departments had been 2.7-1. What happened between 1968 and 2016 was not a slow drift. It was a systematic transformation. Another 2016 survey found that in New England, home to Harvard, Yale, MIT, and much of the American establishment, the faculty ratio of liberals to conservatives stood at 28-1. At an American Enterprise Institute conference that same year, scholars reported that roughly 18% of American social scientists identified as Marxists, compared to 5% who identified as conservative. Senator Ted Cruz, describing his experience at a prestigious law school, put it plainly: there were more self-identified communists on the faculty than Republicans. If you asked them whether America should become a socialist state, 80% would vote yes, and the other 10% would say the idea was too conservative. Now, why does this matter? Because universities are not neutral warehouses of information. They are communities of intellectual practice. What the faculty believe, what questions they treat as settled, what views they reward, and which they penalize, shapes the intellectual formation of every student who passes through. If the institution is heavily tilted in one ideological direction, so will the education it provides. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to the 1960s. A generation of Western students came of age in that decade, shaped by Marxist critical theory, in particular by the Frankfurt School. A group of German Jewish intellectuals who had fled Nazi Germany and settled largely at American universities. They were brilliant, they were prolific, and they were deeply hostile to the civilization that had produced both Nazism and American consumer capitalism. Their project was the systematic critique of Western culture from within. The protest movements of the 1960s against the Vietnam War for civil rights, and eventually against almost everything the established order represented, gave this intellectual framework a mass audience. Hundreds of thousands of students absorbed its categories: oppressor and oppressed ideology and false consciousness, hegemony and resistance. But then the protests ended. America withdrew from Vietnam in 1973. The marches stopped, and those radicalized students had to decide what to do next. Many of them went to graduate school. They studied literature, philosophy, sociology, journalism, and education. They completed their doctorates. They applied for academic positions, and they got them because the universities of the 1970s and early 1980s were expanding rapidly and needed staff, and because the hiring committees of that era were not by and large looking carefully at the ideological commitments of the candidates they were appointing. Their guide, though many may not have known it explicitly, was Antonio Gramsci, the Italian Marxist theorist, who had argued in his prison notebooks that lasting revolutionary change did not require seizing state power by force. It required something more patient and more powerful: the capture of what he called the superstructure, the cultural institutions, the universities, the media, the legal profession, the arts through which a society's values are formed and transmitted. He called this the long march through the institutions. Herbert Marcuse, perhaps the most influential Frankfurt School figure for the American New Left, declared in 1974 that the radical movement was being reborn in the universities. He was not wrong. One radical professor, reflecting on this period, wrote with a candor unusual in academic prose: "After Vietnam, many of us did not return to literature. We entered academic positions. After the war ended, we seemed to have disappeared. Now we have tenure, and the work of transforming the university has begun in earnest." That phrase, the work of transforming the university, deserves to be read carefully. This was not a project of expanding knowledge or challenging received opinion through better evidence and argument. It was a project of institutional transformation in the service of a political program. Once tenured, these scholars had significant power. They sat on hiring committees. They could and did screen out candidates whose intellectual commitments differed from their own. They shaped curriculum, approved dissertations, and determined the direction of research. As the older generation of faculty retired, they were replaced almost exclusively by scholars trained in the same tradition. The university's intellectual monoculture was not a natural development. It was, to a meaningful degree, engineered. What did this transformation actually look like inside the lecture hall and the seminar room? Begin with the humanities, literature, history, philosophy, where the change was most dramatic and most consequential. In the traditional conception of these disciplines, the literary work was primary. The critic's job was to illuminate it, to bring the reader into closer contact with what the text was doing, what it revealed about human experience, what moral and aesthetic wisdom it contained. Theory-interpretive frameworks served that purpose. It was a means, not an end. From the late 1960s onward, this relationship inverted. Theory became the purpose. The text became an example illustrative material deployed to demonstrate the power of the theoretical framework. And the frameworks that came to dominate were not chosen for their capacity to illuminate literature. They were chosen for their ideological utility. The two most cited theorists in the humanities at the height of this movement were Jacques Derrida and Michel Foucault. Derrida's deconstruction was at its core a sustained attack on the idea that language can carry stable meaning and therefore that texts can have authoritative interpretations. If language is inherently unstable, then any reading is as valid as any other, and the critic is free to use the text for whatever political purpose she chooses, while dismissing the author's evident intentions as naive. Foucault's work argued in essence that there is no truth, only power, that all claims to knowledge are really claims to social control, and that all institutions are mechanisms of domination. Foucault was for a period a member of the French Communist Party. His intellectual influence on Western academia has been immense. His formulation that prisons, hospitals, schools, and families are all fundamentally instruments of social control, and that this diagnosis justifies their radical dismantling, has shaped how generations of students understand their own society. Roger Scruton, the English philosopher, put the point with characteristic precision. The methods of the new literary theorists are essentially subversive. They aim to deconstruct the human sciences from within, to sever the thread of sympathy that connects us to our culture. That is not criticism in any normal sense. It is ideological colonization dressed in academic clothing. Here is what this meant in practice for a student sitting in a literature seminar. In traditional literary study, you asked, what is this work doing? What does it reveal about human experience? Is it true? Is it beautiful? Does it enlarge my understanding of what it means to be alive? In the Marxist-inflected seminar, which by the 1990s had become standard across much of the Anglophone academy, you asked different questions entirely. You asked, whose interests does this text serve? What ideology does it reproduce? How does it construct and reinforce the dominance of particular groups? Defined by class, gender, race, sexual orientation. What does it reveal about the oppression that the author, however unconsciously, was perpetuating? One prominent American Marxist literary theorist wrote explicitly that the political perspective constitutes the absolute horizon of all reading and interpretation. In other words, every text without exception must be read as political allegory. The degree to which you have identified the oppressive power structures concealed within it is the measure of how deeply you have understood it. You can see what this does to literature. Shakespeare's plays become documents of patriarchal ideology. Dante becomes a vehicle for medieval European power. Greek tragedy is mined for evidence of proto-colonial attitudes. The works themselves, their actual complexity, their moral depth, their beauty, are treated as incidental or worse, as camouflage for the power structures they reproduce. Mao Zedong, discussing Dream of the Red Chamber, one of the greatest novels in Chinese literary history, described it as being about 4 great clans, intense class struggle, and the deaths of dozens of people. That reduction is not literary criticism. It is ideological processing. And the Western neo-Marxist version of the same move, while dressed in far more sophisticated theoretical apparatus, achieves precisely the same result. It drains the text of its humanity and replaces it with a political verdict. The same logic applied to history. Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States became from the 1980s onward one of the most widely assigned history texts in American schools and universities. Its governing premise that the entire American historical narrative is a lie constructed by the powerful to conceal their exploitation of the weak gave successive generations of students a ready-made framework for understanding their own country as irredeemably corrupt. Not as a flawed human project, as all human projects are flawed. As something whose founding principles were themselves fraudulent. This is not history. History requires the weighing of evidence, the acknowledgement of complexity, the recognition that the past contained real human beings facing real constraints who were neither entirely heroes nor entirely villains. What Zinn offered was something else, a prosecutorial brief with a verdict already determined. The trial was over before it began. Underlying all of this was a particular intellectual maneuver that deserves to be named clearly because once you can see it, you see it everywhere. Marx distinguished between genuine consciousness and false consciousness, the state of being unable to perceive one's own oppression. Because the ideas of the ruling class have been so thoroughly absorbed that they feel like common sense. Louis Althusser, the French Marxist philosopher, developed this into a comprehensive theory of ideological state apparatuses. The argument that institutions like religion, education, the family law, and media exist primarily to reproduce the dominance of the ruling class by shaping how people think, feel, and desire. The clever move here, and it is genuinely clever, which is part of why it has been so influential, is that it makes every possible counter-argument invalid in advance. If you defend traditional values, you are simply demonstrating your false consciousness. You have been so thoroughly colonized by ruling class ideology that you cannot see your own oppression. If you appeal to reason, you are appealing to a concept that the ruling class constructed to serve its own interests. If you cite evidence, the evidence itself is ideologically tainted. Philosophers call this poisoning the well. Before anyone can draw water from the well, you declare it contaminated, so that everything that comes from it must be distrusted. Applied not to a single argument, but to an entire civilization's moral, philosophical, and cultural inheritance, this move is extraordinarily destructive. It does not refute Western values. It simply declares that those values have no standing to defend themselves. Alan Sokal, a physicist at New York University, tested the limits of this framework in 1996. He submitted a deliberately nonsensical paper to a prestigious cultural studies journal, arguing with elaborate but meaningless jargon that quantum gravity was a social and linguistic construct. The paper was accepted and published. When Sokal revealed the hoax, he explained that he had wanted to discover whether a journal would publish an article liberally salted with nonsense, if it sounded good and flattered the editor's ideological preconceptions. It would. The implications for the intellectual integrity of the entire field were stark and largely ignored. From here, we begin to see a clearer pattern. The manipulation matrix does not target only a few books or a few extreme professors. It targets the way human beings understand the world. It wants to decide what is called science, what is called progress, what is allowed to enter the classroom, and what is pushed aside as superstition, backwardness, and anti-intellectualism. Once education is controlled by ideology, people can redefine truth. And once they have redefined truth, they can also redefine the origin of human beings. This is the door that leads to a deeper layer of deception. After weakening literature, history, philosophy, and morality, the next step is far more dangerous, attacking the most sacred question humanity has ever asked. Where do human beings come from? Are human beings creations of the Creator, carrying a soul morality and responsibility before heaven? Or are human beings only advanced creatures born from randomness, shaped by instinct, competition, and blind madness? This is no longer an ordinary academic debate. This is the central battlefield of the human soul. And the pinnacle of deception is Darwin's doctrine. Because if Satan wants to cut human beings off from the Creator, he needs a weapon more subtle than burning the Bible or persecuting religion. He needs something that can walk straight into schools, appear in textbooks, laboratories, and university lecture halls, and be presented as such an obvious truth that anyone who questions it is immediately seen as backward. That is Darwinian evolution. Look carefully at this move. For thousands of years, from east to west, human beings understood that they were creations, with souls made with purpose, morality, and responsibility before the Creator. Although each civilization called him by different names, they still believed that behind this universe there was a higher order and a moral standard above personal desire. But when Darwin's doctrine was placed at the center of modern education, human beings were gradually taught that they are only products of matter. Random mutation, natural selection, and a struggle for survival, stretching across millions of years. No sacred image of the Creator remains. No higher purpose remains. No moral responsibility before heaven remains. Only a creature that evolved slightly higher than animals, standing at the top of the food chain through luck and strength. Do you see where the danger lies? When human beings believe they are only animals, they will more easily live by animal instinct. When they become angry when they do wrong, they can excuse themselves by saying it is only wild instinct. When sacred origin is erased from the mind, morality loses its solid foundation. And Satan surely loves this. He only needs to make children believe that God is not necessary in the story of life. He only needs to make human beings stop believing that they were born from the Creator. Over time, that sacred origin will be forgotten. And when the place of God is left empty and the human soul, demons will try to step in and replace him. Even more dangerous from a biological hypothesis, this doctrine is turned into an atheist religion. That atheist religion has a very clear doctrine: no Creator, no divine design, no soul given by God, no absolute moral standard. Everything is reduced to genes, instinct, environment, power, and survival. When that worldview takes over education, children are no longer taught that they were born to live uprightly, to revere heaven, to love their parents, and to distinguish good from evil. They are taught that they are only the result of cosmic chance, intelligent creatures that accidentally appeared in a cold universe. Gradually, an entire generation may put the Bible down because they think science has completely replaced the Word of God. Prayer becomes embarrassing in the eyes of young people who want to be seen as intelligent. From there, the door opens to a larger chain of collapse. If human beings are only evolved animals, the family can be viewed as a temporary social structure. If morality is only a product of evolution, then good and evil can be rewritten according to the will of those in power. If human life is only matter, then unborn children, the elderly, the weak, and the sick can easily be judged by the standard of usefulness. If survival is the highest law, compassion becomes weakness and power becomes truth. You see, when Darwin's doctrine is pushed into an ideology, it does not only answer the question of where human beings come from, it changes humanity's entire understanding of right and wrong. That is why this deception is more dangerous than an ordinary lie. An ordinary lie deceives you for a moment, but a distorted worldview can deceive you for an entire lifetime. Satan understands this very well. If a child grows up believing he is a creation of God, he will carry a sacred dignity in his heart. He knows his body deserves to be guarded, his words must carry responsibility, and his actions will be judged by a standard higher than the crowd. He knows that parents are a gift, family is a covenant, life is grace, and sin is not a game. But if that child is taught that he is only an accidental creature shaped by instinct and competition, many dangerous doors will open. He will easily believe that desire is natural, rebellion is maturity, selfishness is strength, and holiness is only the leftover of an ancient age. This is the pinnacle of deception, turning a rebellion against the Creator into a mandatory science lesson. In the classroom, it is presented through diagrams, fossils, Latin terms, timelines, and the cold voice of academic authority. But beneath that outer layer is a silent message: human beings were not created, they merely appeared on their own. Human beings do not have sacred souls, they only have brains. Human beings do not need salvation, they only need progress. Human beings do not need to kneel before God, they only need to believe in themselves. And that message is the echo of the ancient temptation in the Garden of Eden: you will be like God. From the serpent in Eden to the modern lecture hall, the core tactic has never changed. Satan always wants human beings to believe that they can define truth for themselves, rewrite morality for themselves, explain their own origin for themselves, save themselves, and eventually sit in the place that belongs to the Creator. But the truth still stands. Human beings are not accidents of the universe. Human beings are creations with souls. Life is grace. Conscience is a sacred mark placed deep within the soul. The longing for goodness is a call reminding human beings that they come from a higher source and must return before the one who created them. Therefore, when looking at Darwin's doctrine, we need to clearly distinguish between humble scientific observation and arrogant atheist ideology. True science observes the world, asks questions, tests evidence, and recognizes its own limits. But when science is turned into a weapon against God, it is no longer pure science. It becomes a mask covering the oldest rebellion in the history of the universe. That is not progress. It is a spiritual disaster packaged in modern language. And that is why we must name the problem correctly. The pinnacle of deception is not only making human beings sin. The pinnacle of deception is making human beings believe that sin does not exist. The pinnacle of deception is not only making human beings forget God. The pinnacle of deception is making human beings believe they never needed God from the beginning. But no matter how thick this fog becomes, the truth does not disappear. There is a Creator. There is a sacred order. There is a truth higher than every ideology built by human beings. And that truth is what Satan fears most. It can be seen that human beings were not born to drift in chaos. Human beings were created by God, and within human nature, there is both goodness and a part that can be tempted. For that reason, the final direction of a person's life is not decided only by circumstance, society, or the age they live in. It is also decided by that person's own choices. When a person turns away from evil and moves toward goodness, preserves conscience, respects the sacred, and lives according to morality, that person is moving closer to God. But when a person gives himself over to desire, hatred, lies, and power, he's gradually moving toward demons. The sad thing is that many people who are naturally kind become tools of manipulation without even realizing it. They believe they are standing on the side of progress, justice, freedom, or humanity. But without clear awareness, those beautiful concepts can be twisted into a cover for deeper destructive programs. Lenin once called such people useful idiots. They are not necessarily bad people. They may be students, professors, artists, journalists, politicians, business owners, or ordinary people who want to do good. But when they are led by a distorted ideology, their kindness can be turned into fuel serving evil. Although modern society has been pushed very far away from the foundation of traditional morality, there is still one important thing to remember. The number of people who truly and willingly hand their souls over to demons and intentionally corrupt humanity is actually very, very small. The great majority of human beings still have good thoughts within them. They can still be moved by sacrifice, still feel pain before injustice, still respect their parents, still want to protect children, and still hope to find the true meaning of their lives. That remaining goodness is the opportunity for human beings to escape the control of darkness. Therefore, the purpose of this final section is not merely to recount a list of conspiracies, and certainly not to spread fear. What matters more is helping listeners recognize the methods demons use to pull human beings away from God. They may use violence in the East, temptation in the West, education, to change perception media, to control speech, entertainment, to stimulate desire, politics, to divide society, money to bind human beings, and beautiful concepts to hide their real goals. When we look at modern life, we see that this attack does not happen in only one place. It enters the family, the school, the church, the media, the arts, the law, the economy, and even the private life of each person. It encourages people to live recklessly, worship pleasure, become addicted to gambling, drugs, pornography, violent video games, and forms of entertainment that numb the mind. When people become addicted, they gradually lose the ability to think independently. When the mind is trapped in constant stimulation, people no longer have enough quietness to ask themselves what they are truly living for. From there, traditional professions are also damaged. Crafts, art, music, architecture, rituals, and ways of life that once connected human beings with the memory of God gradually come to be seen as outdated. In their place, society runs after what is called innovation at any cost. Beauty is replaced by shock. Refinement is replaced by stimulation. Discipline is replaced by indulgence. Tradition is replaced by short-term trends. When a society loses traditional professions, traditional culture, and a traditional rhythm of life, it also loses part of its own spiritual memory. After weakening human beings from within, demons continue attacking social order. They understand that to control the world, they must control three major forms of power: political power, financial power, and the power of speech. Government holds law and the military. Finance holds livelihood and debt. Media, academia, education, religion, and the arts hold the power to define right and wrong in the human mind. When these three powers are manipulated at the same time, society will gradually be pulled away from the order God established. In the field of religion, the destruction is extremely subtle. Demons do not only attack the church from the outside, they also try to enter from within corrupt doctrine, turn faith into a political tool, and turn sermons about salvation into calls for struggle, hatred, or worldly power. When those who represent religion lose their holiness, believers lose trust in the church, and then gradually move away even from the teachings of God. This is one of the most dangerous attacks because it makes people think they are leaving falsehood behind, while in reality they are being pulled farther away from the path back to the Creator. The family is also a key target. In every stable society, the family is the first place where human beings learn love, responsibility, filial respect, discipline, and sacrifice. The family is a fortress that protects children from the chaos outside. Therefore, to destroy human beings, demons must weaken the family. They promote a reckless lifestyle, contempt for marriage, adultery, divorce, casual abortion, the disruption of natural roles within the family, and the removal of parents' authority to educate their children. When the family breaks apart, each individual becomes lonelier, weaker, and easier for the outside system to control. In the East, darkness often uses direct violence. It takes advantage of war, revolution, and crisis to seize power, then uses propaganda prisons, purges, and religious persecution to crush traditional culture. In Russia and China, Revolutions carried out in the name of liberation opened the way for regimes that killed tens of millions of people. In China alone, the Cultural Revolution directly attacked a 5,000-year civilization, destroying temples, burning books, denouncing intellectuals, humiliating those who preserved tradition, and cutting many generations off from their spiritual roots. In the West, the method is often softer, but no less dangerous. Instead of using violent revolution, darkness uses infiltration, media, education, law, finance, and social movements to gradually change perception. Concepts such as freedom, equality, human rights, and progress can be used as covers to push society away from traditional morality. When law is no longer based on a moral foundation, it can be used to protect what is wrong and punish those who dare to speak what is right. Money also becomes a very strong chain. When people are pushed into a lifestyle of spending first and paying later, when governments live on debt, individuals live on debt, and nations live on debt, true freedom will gradually shrink. A person who owes the bank for life finds it very hard to live independently. A nation dependent on global financial systems also finds it very hard to preserve complete sovereignty. When currency is manipulated, economic crises can be created. And then those very crises can be used to call for more power to be concentrated in the hands of the state or global organizations. From here, the idea of a global government is promoted through slogans that sound very beautiful. International cooperation, regional integration, global order, and common solutions for humanity. But behind those pleasant words lies the danger of weakening national sovereignty, blurring national identity, and placing human beings into a more centralized management system than ever before. When every nation is drawn into the same machine-controlling thought administration, population and personal life becomes far easier. Besides this, demons also create social upheaval through war, revolution, economic crisis, mass migration, terrorism, and manipulated social movements. War breaks the old order. Revolution stirs up hatred. Economic crisis makes people afraid and more willing to accept extreme solutions. Mass migration uproots people from their culture, separates them from their homeland, makes it harder to preserve tradition, and more easily pulls them into new conflicts. Terrorism makes society live in fear, and from there, people become willing to hand more power to systems of control. One of the most familiar tactics is divide and rule. Traditional society relied on family, community, religion, morality, and custom to regulate conflicts. But when society is broken into opposing groups, people no longer see one another as fellow citizens or brothers, but as enemies. Class, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, and political views can all be turned into weapons of division. When each individual is isolated, they no longer have enough strength to resist a massive system of power. Society is broken into small pieces below, while power is concentrated above. These are two sides of the same process. To maintain control, darkness must also hide itself. It often makes small plans public in order to make people lose vigilance against the larger plan. It labels those who dare to warn others as extreme backward conspiracy theorists, dangerous, hateful, or anti-progress. Once a person is labeled, society no longer listens to what that person is saying. In this way, the truth is pushed to the margins without any serious debate. At the same time, it distracts public opinion with constant breaking news, scandals, conflicts, and shocking events. People are pulled into small issues, short bursts of anger, and endless arguments, while the larger plan continues moving forward quietly. Even when some people see the problem, their voices are easily drowned in the noise of media and the crowd. But after everything, the most important thing still returns to each person's choice. God created human beings with conscience. Demons can seduce, deceive, threaten, buy off, and manipulate, but they cannot make the final choice on behalf of a human being. When a person truly gives rise to a good thought, wants to leave evil behind, and wants to return to tradition, morality, and reverence for God, that person has already begun stepping out of the net. Awakening does not necessarily begin with great actions. It can begin when a person decides to stop feeding harmful desires. Stop chasing hatred. Stop letting the media control their emotions. Stop looking down on family. Stop mocking faith and begin living more uprightly in small things every day. One person who preserves conscience will influence a family. One family that preserves morality will influence a community. One community that preserves tradition will become a wall that keeps darkness from spreading. Therefore, the purpose of this entire journey is not to make listeners despair. On the contrary, it reminds us that there is still a path back. Human beings need to clearly recognize the masks of demons, but they also need to remember what God has established for mankind. Family morality, culture, true art, honest work, reverence for heaven, self-control, compassion, and responsibility for the next generation. Demons want human beings to forget who they are. God wants human beings to remember their sacred origin. Demons want human beings to live by instinct. God teaches human beings to live by conscience. Demons want to divide society into groups that hate one another. God teaches human beings to move toward goodness, tolerance, and steadfastness in what is right. In the end, God will surely triumph over demons. But each person still has to decide which side they will stand on. That choice does not only determine our present life, it also determines the direction of our eternal life. When we reach the end of this journey, we can take one step back and look at the whole picture with a calm mind. The 5 ancient books we have just opened do not merely tell forgotten stories from Ethiopian history. They are like 5 different layers of a file, and each layer shows us one more part of the way Satan searches for every possible path to pull human beings away from the Creator. In the book of Adam and Eve, that scheme begins on the smallest scale of family. Satan does not need armies, thrones, or empires. He only needs to plant despair in the hearts of Adam and Eve. He only needs to make them forget that even after the fall, they can still return to God. He wants human beings to see their sin as a final stop. He wants them to believe that repentance has come too late, that the love of God has already closed its doors. But precisely where human beings are weakest, we see the mercy of the Creator. He does not abandon Adam and Eve in their suffering. He still protects, still guides, and still opens a path for humanity to continue living. Then, in the Kebra Nagast, that scheme steps onto the throne. Satan understands that if he wants to manipulate humanity, he must reach those who hold power. He tries to turn kingdoms away from the truth, hide the truth about God, and make human beings worship things imagined by their own hands. But that plan is stopped when the Queen of Sheba hears about the wisdom of Solomon, leaves her kingdom, crosses the desert, and sees a higher order with her own eyes. She realizes that true power does not lie in gold camel caravans or crowns, but in reverence for the Creator. And from that meeting, Ethiopian tradition tells us that the Ark of the Covenant was brought to a land prepared to protect it through centuries of turmoil. But Satan does not stop with the family or the throne. In the book of Enoch, we see the scheme move to a more terrifying level, corrupting the very lineage of humanity. The fallen watchers, Samyaza Azazel and the rebels, brought down to earth knowledge that could be abused, weapons, seduction spells, astrology, and tools that pushed human beings deeper into violence. The Nephilim appeared as the consequence of a rebellion that crossed the limits set for mankind. The earth was pushed into brutality until the cries of all living things rose before the throne of God. But once again, Satan miscalculated. He thought that if the world were corrupted to its roots, God would be forced to wipe out humanity. But the Lord preserved Noah, a righteous family, a seed for a new humanity. Judgment came, but mercy was still present. And then, in the Ascension of Isaiah, we see another battlefield, not beneath the earth, but in the firmament above. Isaiah is taken through the heavens and witnesses a reality that ordinary eyes cannot see. Their chaos, jealousy, conflict, and manipulation are constantly at work. What is frightening is that what happens in human life is often only a reflection of that invisible war. Hatred between brothers, wars between nations, the greed of rulers, deception in society, arrogance in the intellect. All of these can become doorways for darkness to act upon this world. But Isaiah also shows us a greater truth. The higher heavens still belong to God. Satan may manipulate the lower regions, but he can never touch the supreme power of the Creator. Finally, when we return to the earth with the Garima Gospels, the story is no longer only a vision or an ancient tradition. It becomes a real artifact, rooted in history, in material, in ink, in goatskin pages that have endured for more than 1,500 years. When empires burned books, when wars consumed libraries, when powers tried to erase humanity's sacred memory, God still protected His word in a place few would have expected, on the distant mountains of Ethiopia. This reminds us that the truth of God is not as fragile as human beings imagine. It may be hidden for a time. It may be buried under the dust of history. It may be mocked by the arrogant. But it does not disappear. And when we place these 5 books together, we see a very clear line running through them. Satan always changes his methods, but his goal never changes. He wants human beings to despair in sin as Adam and Eve did. He wants kingdoms to worship the wrong object, as the kingdom of Sheba did before Makeda met Solomon. He wants to corrupt the body, the mind, and the lineage of humanity, as in the days of the Watchers. He wants to manipulate human thought from invisible realms, as in Isaiah's vision. And when he cannot erase the word of God, he tries to make human beings take their eyes off that word, keeping them busy with desire, fear, pride, money, politics, conflict, and doctrines that make them forget who created them. That is the most important point to reflect on after this whole journey. The real war does not take place only inside ancient books. It still takes place in every family, every classroom, every phone screen, every personal decision, every time we choose truth or lies, forgiveness or hatred, self-control or indulgence, prayer or turning away from God. Satan does not need everyone to openly worship him. Often he only needs human beings to live as if God does not exist. He only needs us to forget prayer. He only needs parents to be too exhausted to teach their children what is right. He only needs young people to believe that purity is outdated, that faith is weakness, that morality is a chain, and that freedom means doing whatever they want. He only needs society to call sin by more pleasant names, and gradually, human beings will lose the ability to recognize what is destroying their own souls. But God does not abandon humanity in that war. From Eden to the time of Noah, from Jerusalem to Ethiopia, from ancient pages to modern life, God has always left signs for human beings to return. He gives human beings conscience so they can feel shame before wrongdoing. He gives human beings family so they can learn love and responsibility. He gives human beings His word so they can distinguish truth from falsehood. He gives human beings the opportunity to repent so that sin does not hold them forever. For that reason, the most important thing, after hearing all of this, is not to fear demons. People of faith do not live by fear. The important thing is to stay awake. Awake enough to recognize what is pulling us away from God. Awake enough to examine the habits that are numbing our minds. Awake enough to protect our families, protect our children, protect the purity of our souls, protect our time of prayer, and protect our reverence for the Creator in an age that constantly wants to mock what is sacred. If you feel that the world today is too loud, too chaotic, and too full of lies, begin with the simplest thing: return to God with sincerity. You do not need beautiful prayers. You do not need to prove that you are perfect. You only need a heart that truly wants to come back. Tell Him that you need His guidance. Ask Him to help you see what is right. Leave what is wrong, protect your family, and keep your soul from the subtle traps of darkness. Because in the end, Satan may deceive, he may plant doubt, he may make the whole world confused, but he cannot defeat a soul that truly returns to God. A person who knows how to pray still has hope. A family that knows how to fear God still has a foundation. A generation that knows how to return to the Word of God still has a future. And a humanity that knows how to repent can still receive mercy. Tonight, as we close the file on the 5 lost books from the Ethiopian tradition, keep one thing in your heart: the truth of God never disappears. It may pass through deserts, through wars, through book burnings, through arrogant empires, through centuries of being forgotten. But in the end, it still stands there waiting for human beings to return. If this video helped you see more clearly the war between faith and darkness, take a second to subscribe to SleepCodex and share your thoughts below. Your support helps content like this continue to be made with greater care, greater depth, and greater value for those seeking truth in a world full of noise. And now let your mind become still. Set aside the heavy images of ancient wars, schemes, empires, rebels, and the noise of the age. Remember that God is still there. He is higher than every power on earth. He is greater than every invisible force. He is closer than every fear resting in your heart. Hold on to faith, hold on to conscience, hold on to prayer, and enter sleep with peace. I will see you again in the next files of SleepCodex.